Reincarnation is the ultimate golden ticket for life's losers, a chance to weaponize special skills and modern knowledge to turn a second life into a victory lap. It's usually a sugary fantasy about starting over on top, but for Otoki Yuichi, the reality is far from magical. He's currently standing outside a Lawson convenience store looking like a man who hasn't seen a bed in a week. Our boy is a 35-year-old single guy grinding away as a part-time clerk. He lives in a cramped, run-down apartment that costs 30,000 yen a month, which he considers a steal just because it includes a bath. His daily grind starts with a 10-minute bike ride to the shop, where he always arrives early to handle the scheduling completely off the clock. Managing the schedule is a total headache since everyone wants the same days off, forcing the clerk to hunt down staff who haven't submitted their hours. He's the punching bag for everyone's bad mood, yet he powers through the checkout rush until 10 p.m. when the night shift kid finally shows up. They face a mountain of grunt work, hauling trash and restocking shelves using the strict first-in, first-out method. The physical toll is brutal. He's constantly lugging heavy crates and sprinting to restock the walk-in cooler. After dealing with the interior, he has to scrub the sidewalk tiles at a breakneck pace. It's in these moments he realizes his youth is long gone, especially as his back begins to scream in protest. Morning finally rolls around at 8 a.m., and it's time to swap out with the early shift. Painkillers have become a food group for the man at this point, as every muscle in his body is on fire. Just as his partner clocks out, the day shift kid decides to be late, meaning our boy has to keep the vest on without a single second of rest. While he's stuck behind the counter, a high school girl asks if he's doing okay because he looks like a walking corpse. He admits he's been working straight through the night and has already clocked out because the owner is a cheapskate about overtime. The girl offers a bit of pity, telling the poor guy to hang in there. A little sympathy from a student is nice, but it's immediately balanced out when he hears other girls whispering about how creepy he is. He takes the insult on the chin. It's just how things are. His brief moment of peace ends when a customer complains about students loitering out front, forcing him to head out and deal with the trash in the crowd. The clerk heads outside and politely asks the teens to clear the entrance. One of the delinquents snaps instantly, getting in his face and threatening to kill the old man. Our boy stays icy calm, explaining that the entrance isn't a lounge, and they're scaring off customers, but the punk just calls him a bastard and tells him to watch his mouth. The thug grabs the clerk by the collar, but instead of panicking, he just hopes the kid punches first, so the cops have a clear-cut case. Suddenly, a girl named Mikimoto Arisa steps in and tells the group to stop harassing the old-timer. He recognizes her immediately. It's his niece, his sister's kid, looking a lot more grown up than the last time he saw her. Arisa clearly runs the show in this group, and her word is law. A boy named Takashi warns the clerk not to get cocky, but she shuts him down by reminding him he's already on the police's radar. Just as the confrontation fizzles out, a blinding light erupts around them. The students freak out, convinced the old man is pulling some kind of trick. A massive magic circle begins to glow beneath their feet. But all our guy can think about is how much he wants to go home and sleep. The students scream for him to do something, even though he's just as clueless as they are. As the light swallows them whole, the clerk finally loses consciousness. He eventually wakes up in a vast echoing void. In the distance, he sees the silhouettes of the high schoolers walking away into the endless white. Looking around, the man realizes there's nothing but pure blinding emptiness in every direction. A voice suddenly booms in his mind, welcoming them as heroes and telling everyone to pipe down. It explains they've been pulled into a different dimension via a hero summoning ritual. While the kids are losing their minds, our boy remains strangely chill about the whole trans-dimensional kidnapping thing. The high schoolers aren't having it, arguing that they're just normal kids who aren't built to fight a demon lord. Meanwhile, the clerk is legitimately stressed that he didn't use up the rest of his red miso paste before leaving. The voice finally introduces itself as the goddess of this world, a place where magic and skills are the law of the land. The goddess offers them cheat skills to ensure they don't get eaten by monsters on day one. The students perk up immediately, especially when she mentions the hero skill, which turns one person into a one-man army. Our boy gets the hype. In a world this dangerous, that skill is the ultimate life insurance policy. The goddess calls up Kanehama Keiichi to receive the hero skill first. The clerk figures it's a solid choice, considering the kid has a strong sense of justice and didn't freeze up during the summoning. The moment the power is bestowed, Keiichi is teleported away, a safeguard to keep the group from fighting over who got the best loot. Next up is Momori Saori, who receives the Saintess skill for healing. It fits her sweet personality perfectly. Tudo Yuta, a regular who buys bread every morning, gets the Swordmaster skill. Finally, Matsuria Yuki is dubbed the Sage for offensive magic, rounding out the core squad of heavy hitters. The goddess keeps the gifts coming, handing Nishina Yuki the magic nullification skill. The clerk remembers her as the one who called him creepy and figures her attitude might be a problem. Mayama Shozo gets absolute appraisal, and Nomura Koichi scores the copy ability, a power the clerk knows is a recipe for disaster in the wrong hands. Kanzaki Tatsuya is handed instant kill magic, which seems like a terrifying amount of power to give a delinquent. The school nurse gets full restoration, while the teacher, Kinoshita Tomoe, is granted assassination arts. Our guy thinks the skill is a weird fit for her gentle vibe, though he internally admits she's totally his type. Nanakamato Yashiro gains hyper-acceleration. Katu Junya gets a permanent debuff skill, and Neitu Takashi, the brat Arisa mentioned, is given brainwashing eye contact. The clerk watches as the last of the students vanish, leaving him alone in the void. The goddess rattles off a few more broken powers like transcendent alchemy and absolute defense. Our boy waits patiently for his name to be called, but the voice goes silent. Seeing that the room is empty, he finally pipes up and asks when he gets his cheat skill and his ticket out of there. The goddess is genuinely stunned to see him, having assumed the room was empty. She's already tapped out of cheat skills. He introduces himself as a 35-year-old clerk, and the deity realizes there's been a massive glitch. He was never supposed to be part of the ritual at all. She starts scanning his mind to get the facts straight and is visibly creeped out by how casually he treats being threatened by street punks. He explains he was literally being held by the collar when the circle popped. The goddess sighs, since he's here. She has to give him something, but she's fresh out of the good stuff. The clerk's total lack of ego about being called creepy makes the goddess even more uncomfortable. She can't send him back and she can't drop him in the new world with nothing. So she decides to shovel a mountain of garbage junk skills into him just to stabilize the transfer. Our boy accepts the leftovers, figuring scraps are better than a death sentence. Energy pours into the man with a sensation that is less magical and more agonizing. The goddess doesn't care about his discomfort, telling him that if he plans on dying, he should go do it somewhere else. With a cold goodbye, she kicks him out of the void. He's sent plummeting through a dark vortex toward a massive stone castle perched on a hill. He lands in a grand pillared hallway and is immediately greeted by armored guards with swords drawn. To save his skin, he spills everything he knows about the summoning ritual. This convinces the white-armored Captain Margarine that he's telling the truth. She acknowledges that he's an accidental +1 who got caught in the crossfire of the hero summoning. The captain pulls off her helmet, revealing she's a total knockout. When the man introduces himself as a convenience store shift leader, she assumes it's a high-ranking title, and he's not about to correct her. He gets a bit flustered when she reads his emotions so easily, and the mood lightens when she mentions a hero told her that knights in his world are famously known as Kokoro. The knight captain offers to be his guide, and our boy is genuinely thankful for the help. He's not used to being treated like a gentleman by beautiful women, so he's a little caught off guard. Over tea, they settle in for a briefing. He starts with the basics. What's this country called, and how bad is this war with the Demon Lord? They are in the Rungard Kingdom, basically the superpower of this world. Markurine describes the Demon Lord as an invader from a decade ago, but the clerk notes that the conflict sounds more like a messy border dispute than a battle of pure good versus evil. The captain goes quiet, admitting that as a knight of the realm, she can't exactly agree with him out loud. Her silence tells him everything he needs to know about the kingdom's dirty laundry. He realizes the students were essentially kidnapped to fight a war over national interests, not morality. He tells the captain that her job must be miserable, having to facilitate the abduction of children. She's stunned by his empathy, confessing that she hates being unable to stop the summoning. The clerk sees that the captain is drowning in guilt and self-blame. He notes that her burden as a knight is far heavier than any shift leader drama he ever dealt with. She tells him it's unfair for a stranger to see through her so clearly, but he just apologizes, saying he's naturally inclined to root for hardworking people who get the short end of the stick. Later, the clerk is brought to the audience chamber with the students. He quickly pegs the kingdom's leadership as arrogant elitists who already treat the heroes like tools. The king gives a theatrical speech about a betrayal 10 years ago and massacres by monsters, but our boy smells propaganda, suspecting this whole war started over a botched diplomatic meeting. The old man on the throne is clearly spinning a tall tale to keep the kids in line. The clerk notices all the other sensible adults have been cleared out so no one can challenge the king's narrative. The king then offers a deal: fight for the kingdom, and they can have anything they want. He asks if anyone has a problem with joining the noble cause. Our boy knows that if the kids stood together and said no, they might escape, but they're falling for the bait. Keiichi is already eager to play hero, and most of the others are blinded by the promise of wealth and status. They're being groomed into human weapons for the kingdom, and there's nothing he can do to stop the momentum. The king has one final request before the heroes are sent to their rooms. He wants a demonstration of their power. The students panic, thinking they're about to be thrown into a gladiator pit, but the king just wants to see their status boards. The clerk is stunned to find out this world literally runs on video game logic, which he finds a bit disturbing. The king tells them to just think the command, and a status board appears. Our boy looks at his and sees nothing but G ranks, the absolute bottom of the barrel, and his skill is listed as a literal error. Meanwhile, the room erupts as the staff checks Keiichi's board. Apparently, he's exactly the powerhouse the kingdom was praying for. Keiichi is a monster, sporting S ranks in everything and 4 different attributes: light, fire, healing, and fighting spirit. The officials are losing their minds because most people are lucky to have one. He's already hit the human ceiling at level 1, and with an SSSS rank dragon as a historical benchmark, his potential is terrifyingly high. The rest of the main group is just as broken. Sayori has SS magic, Matsuria has 5 attributes, and Yuta has SS strength. The clerk watches as the gap between the main characters and the background students becomes a canyon. Nomura breaks the tension by laughing and demanding to see the old man's stats. Sure, they must be special in some way. Nomura howls with laughter at the clerk's pathetic G ranks, calling him a total loser. Our boy doesn't mind the mockery. Being labeled trash makes him invisible to the king's schemes, which is a win in his book. The heroes are dismissed to their luxury quarters, but the clerk is ordered to stay behind in the throne room. The king is blunt. Since the clerk was an accident with useless skills, he's a waste of space. He's banished from the palace and banned from ever seeing the heroes again. Our boy is thrilled but plays it cool, arguing just enough to make his exit look forced. He claims throwing him out with no info is a death sentence, keeping up the act of a desperate victim. The clerk doubles down on the gamble, suggesting that since the goddess herself dropped him here, tossing him out might be considered blasphemy. He doesn't know if they're religious, but it works. The king huddles with his advisors and agrees that while his skills are trash, he'll give the man 1 week to prepare before the banishment is enforced. Our boy bows, thanking the king for his mercy, while Margarine is assigned to watch him for the week. He's free to roam the palace, and the first thing he does is ask the captain to lead him to the library. He needs to research magic and skills immediately while he still has the clearance. Time is the enemy now. The captain takes him to the great library, a massive hall packed with every bit of knowledge in the kingdom. She asks if he's going to read the whole place, but the man says he'll probably only focus on about 10% of the collection. He's looking for quality over quantity. His method is pure speed reading. Grab a mountain of books, skim them all, and toss the junk. The captain thinks he's just being lazy, but he knows he can't afford to waste a single second. As he dives in, he realizes the goddess gave him one useful gift. He can read the local script as easily as his native Japanese. The captain checks in, and the clerk confirms he's making progress. He explains that he cycles through the books repeatedly, finding new layers of info as his knowledge base grows. He sheepishly admits he mastered this binge reading style back in college, which he spent so much time doing that he actually flunked out of school. Over 5 days of intense study, the man pieces together the rules of this world. Magic is a process, circles, and mana that anyone can learn. Skills, however, are higher-level cheat rules that ignore physics and logic to grant a benefit without a cause. It's the difference between building a fire and simply willing the heat into existence. By day 6, the clerk understands that attributes allow for magic without circles. He decides that learning enchantment is his best path to utilizing those junk skills. He asks the captain for an introduction to the court mage, Shariva. Since the king's orders were to let him be, she leads him straight to the mage's quarters. Enchantment is the ultimate loophole for our boy. It allows the user to shove skills and attributes into items or other people, while living things eventually flush the magic out. Inanimate objects like iron or stone keep the skill until they break. With his mountain of surplus junk skills, he realizes he can turn a rusty blade into a god-tier weapon. Margarine knocks, assuring the mage inside that she isn't there to deliver a lecture. Shariva, a red-headed spitfire, is thrilled to meet an otherworlder. The clerk introduces himself politely, but Shariva decides his name is boring and renames him Otogin on the spot. She's eccentric, but she's clearly hooked on the idea of teaching him the craft. Margarine drops a massive bombshell. The person currently clinging to our boy is actually over 100 years old and biologically a man. Otoki Yuichi remains completely unfazed by the revelation, introducing himself as an otherworlder and figuring that people like Shariva must be common in fantasy realms. The mage is genuinely impressed by his steel nerves, noting that most men would flinch at the sight of a decrepit old man hiding behind such a cute exterior. Our protagonist simply promises to act more shocked in the future, to be polite, and the mage finally asks what kind of favor he needs. The plan is simple. Use enchantment magic to bestow leftover skills onto objects. Shariva immediately recognizes the brilliance of the strategy and agrees that enchantment is the perfect loophole. As the top mage in the palace, he offers to teach the newcomer personally, but the lessons come with a bizarre condition. Leaning in with a visible blush, the mage demands Yuichi's virginity as payment. To everyone's shock, our boy agrees to the trade without a second thought. The mage has to clarify that he's literally talking about taking his innocence, but Yuichi confirms he understands that naughty things are part of the deal. He sees it as a fair exchange for such high-level knowledge. While they finalize the terms of this questionable contract, Margarine can only watch from the sidelines in absolute horror. The mage double-checks if he's really okay giving himself up to another man, and an old one at that. Yuichi admits that since he's 35 and still hasn't lost his V-card, he doesn't really mind as long as the partner is cute. This logic completely baffles the wizard. Meanwhile, Margarine is having an existential crisis, unsure if she should respect the man's resolve or look down on his lack of standards. Realizing things have gotten a bit weird, the salaryman bows and apologizes for his lack of romantic tact. The mage admits he was only thrown off because his student didn't show an ounce of embarrassment. Deciding to change the terms to something more manageable, the wizard proposes a new trade. Instead of sex, Yuichi just has to call him Shuri-kun with affection. Our boy flashes a smile and agrees that this new deal is much easier to handle. The deal is sealed with a friendly head pat, leading Margarine to conclude that both of these guys are total weirdos. Despite her confusion, the training officially begins. The mage's demeanor shifts into serious territory as he explains his lifelong research into making enchantment magic more efficient and practical. The theory focuses on metal infusion. Shariva once tried transferring properties between different metals, but the mana cost was too astronomical for everyday use. He realizes that our boy's method of infusing personal skills is a game changer because it requires almost no energy. Over the next 48 hours, the palace's greatest magician drills him on the essentials, and the student proves to be a natural at absorbing the craft. With the crash course complete, the trainee prepares to depart the palace. He's managed to pick up some basic recovery and support magic along the way to boost his survival odds. His mentor comes to see him off, earning one last head pat for his troubles. They both know they likely won't cross paths again, but the traveler promises to make the most of the powerful tools he was given. The mage tells him to do his best, officially labeling him as one of his rare disciples. Yuichi accepts the title, thinking a recommendation from a court mage might open doors later. As a parting gift, he's handed an item storage bag. It's a modest magic tool with the capacity of a one-person bathtub. Nothing that would break the mage's bank, but a huge leg up for a starting adventurer. Our boy offers another head pat, treating the ancient mage with the respect of a true adult. The mentor reveals that the bag isn't empty. There's some startup cash and an extra special gift inside. He pulls out his personal research notebook, containing every secret he's uncovered regarding enchantment and fusion. He expects his student to be blown away, but the man's calm, polite reaction just ends up annoying him. The wizard explains that while the notebook was never meant for the public, it's the perfect guide for an enchanter. These materials are technically national assets, but he's willing to part with them for his only disciple. Yuichi is deeply moved by the generosity, wondering how he can ever truly repay such a massive debt of kindness. Before they part, the mage brings back the original terms of their deal. He asks if Yuichi would still be willing to go through with that naughty condition sometime in the future if the mood strikes. Our boy says it would be an honor, which completely flusters the old wizard as he tries to maintain his cool, dignified persona. The traveler confirms he has zero objections and is genuinely happy the mage accepted him from the start. Shariva tells him not to underestimate a man's pride, though his beaming face betrays his excitement. They make a formal promise. The virginity trade is still on the table for whenever the student is ready. The mage thanks him, looking like he just won the lottery. As the adventurer walks away, the mage is left drooling at the thought of his future prize. Yuichi misses the creepy display but feels like his journey is off to a stellar start. Between the magic bag, the research notes, and the bizarre promise, he leaves the palace feeling like everything is finally going his way. Our hero arrives in the castle town and reflects on the role of adventurers, specialized workers who hunt monsters and harvest resources from the wilds. In a world where magic and beasts make travel lethal, these people provide the materials that keep society running. His first order of business is locating the Adventurer Guild to kickstart his new career. The Guild is a massive global franchise that manages every registered hunter on the planet. Yuichi follows a map provided by Shuri-kun to navigate the busy streets without getting turned around. Just as he reaches the entrance, a hulking, rough-looking thug bumps into him and barks at the old man to get out of the way. Instead of getting angry, the salaryman offers a polite apology, which catches the brute off guard. He figures the guy is just there to hawk some monster parts. Stealing his nerves, the newcomer enters the hall to claim his identification card. He approaches the counter and is greeted by a receptionist named Shirley, who asks how she can assist him. Yuichi requests to register as a new adventurer. Shirley hands over a form, assuming she might need to help him read or write, but he fills it out with professional ease. When she checks the results, she nearly falls out of her chair. He's 35 years old, yet he's level 1 with rank G stats across the board. The receptionist is baffled. Even a child usually hits level 2 just by existing, so a level 1 adult is a statistical anomaly. Our boy produces his status plate as evidence, pointing out his error skill as a possible explanation for his stagnant growth. He manages to smooth talk his way through the confusion, and she eventually agrees to process his registration. The final product is a guild card made of a specialized iron alloy, built to survive fire and combat. Yuichi is half expecting plastic, so the high-quality metal is a surprise. Shirley explains the harsh reality. While most rookies start at F rank, his dismal stats mean he's being placed in G rank, the absolute bottom of the food chain. The receptionist hands him a beginner manual, urging him to study the system so he doesn't get himself killed on a job he can't handle. Yuichi agrees that hitting the books is the smartest move and heads to a table to study immediately. He knows how annoying clueless rookies can be for staff, so he makes sure to be the most prepared novice in the building. After absorbing the manual's contents, the new recruit looks for a suitable request. His peace is shattered by the same massive adventurer from the entrance, who starts laughing at the old man for reading a rookie guide. The thug Gaius mocks him for trying to start a dangerous new career at such an advanced age. Gaius calls him a weak beanpole who thinks he can survive the guild, just by being polite. Drawing on years of corporate survival, Yuichi turns on the charm and starts buttering the guy up. He calls the thug senior and thanks him for the valuable warning. The flattery works like a charm, and the brute immediately softens up to act like a self-important mentor. The big guy admits that without any connections, adventuring was his only option for survival. Yuichi keeps the act going by claiming he saw the man carrying a massive monster recently and was blown away by the display of strength. Gaius takes the bait and starts bragging about a gray wolf he supposedly dominated in seconds. The salaryman keeps the bluff alive and asks for mentorship, leading the thug to offer his services for a hefty fee. Our boy politely deflects, saying he'll reach out when the time is right, successfully neutralizing the threat with social engineering. With the pest gone, he finally focuses on the request board to find his first real job. The goddess pops in for another lecture, explaining that guild requests fall into two categories. Ordinary requests are specific tasks like guarding merchant caravans or serving as security for wealthy families. Standing requests are more general, covering the extermination of local pests or the gathering of medicinal herbs and minerals. These pay out based on the quantity brought in. With the lesson over, she waves a cheerful good. Gear packed and manual in hand, Otoki Yuichi heads into the forest to begin his first day of work. He follows the guide to a patch of medicinal herbs and correctly identifies a detoxifying plant. Thanks to the manual's detailed descriptions, he's able to harvest a massive amount of material. He looks over his full bags with pride. His first outing as a gatherer is a resounding success. Our boy checks his magic backpack, marveling at the gift from Shuriva. The court mage called it a mediocre item, but it's a gold mine for a rookie. It holds a bathtub's worth of items and came preloaded with coins, leather pouches, a tent, tools, and magical catalysts. The mage clearly viewed it as a down payment for that virginity deal, hoping the gear would keep his disciple alive. Despite the mage's humble words, Yuichi realizes the bag is a complete survival kit for an adventurer. He feels a wave of gratitude for his adorable and dependable mentor. Feeling fully prepared for this new life, he finds a quiet rock in the forest to take a well-deserved break. The peace doesn't last long. A pack of 4 goblins is lurking in the undergrowth, watching the lone man with hungry eyes. Without a moment's notice, they spring from the bushes in a coordinated ambush, weapons raised to slaughter the resting adventurer. The monsters swarm him, but Yuichi just calmly watches them approach. One goblin lands a direct, heavy hit on his head with a wooden club, but the man doesn't even budge. The creatures freeze in sheer confusion, unable to process why their strongest strike didn't leave a single scratch on their target. Seeing the monsters lose their nerve, our hero decides to flip the script. He stands up and spreads his arms, activating a skill that manifests as a visible aura. A curious goblin sniffs the air just before the old man's smell skill hits full force. The repulsive stench is so overwhelming that the entire pack begins to gag and dry heave. The goblins scream in disgust and flee into the woods. Yuichi is relieved his enchantments worked so well. He explains that he upgraded his old robe with 3 key skills: shape memory to keep the fabric intact, slash resistance for durability, and impact absorption to nullify physical blows. To the monsters, he looked like an immortal god, but it was just clever skill stacking. It's a bit of a bummer that he had to rely on a leftover skill rather than a divine gift, but he's making it work. He considers how trivial abilities like reading and insomnia became legitimate skills in this world. Confident he can survive, he decides to start grinding. He plans to create an infinite leveling system, much like an old-school RPG player using a clothespin to hold down a controller button. Using night vision and insomnia to ignore the sun, our boy gathers herbs around the clock. He heals his fatigue with magic and then unleashes his disease skill on himself. The skill generates experience points by spreading pathogens, so by damaging himself and immediately healing the symptoms, he creates a perfect loop. By morning, he's already hit level 48, though his physical stats are still stuck at C rank. Despite the high level, his raw power is still frustratingly low. Regardless, he's become a professional harvester through sheer sleepless effort. He arrives back at the guild at the crack of dawn, catching Shirley mid-yawn. She jumps in shock, clearly not expecting any customers this early, and frantically tries to look professional. A flustered Shirley apologizes, admitting she's a disaster in the mornings. Yuichi assures her he understands the struggle of the early shift all too well. She explains that the desk is usually a one-person job until the quest rush starts, and our boy teases her about being caught talking to herself in the silence. She's mortified that he heard her private mumbling. The receptionist begs him to stop teasing, while he silently notes how charming she is. He asks about her schedule, and she reveals that as the new recruit, she's stuck working from opening until the final closing bell. Between chores and work, she has zero time for a life. Yuichi recognizes that corporate grind instantly, and his empathy clearly strikes a chord with her. Shirley looks ready to collapse, explaining that a senior staffer is quitting to get married. This means her current 5-day grind is about to become a 7-day nightmare. She's so drained she can barely keep her eyes open, and our boy decides he can't just stand by and watch a fellow worker burn out. It's time for the perfect record skill to shine. While it was meant for golem control, it gives him a flawless photographic memory, allowing him to scan every page of the palace books and the guild manual in an instant. He stands perfectly still, his brain processing mountains of data as he looks for a loophole that can save the girl's schedule. Inspiration strikes. He asks Shirley if she could manage the 7-day week if she had every single afternoon off. She's stunned but admits that would be a dream come true. She actually enjoys the work. It's just the soul-crushing exhaustion and lack of sleep that are killing her motivation. Leaning over the counter with a determined look, the traveler asks if she'd be willing to sign an exclusive contract with him. The proposal is so sudden that the receptionist can only blink in confusion, asking him to explain what he's thinking. She points out that exclusive contracts are unheard of for level 1 rookies, but Yuichi just starts unloading massive sacks of herbs onto the counter. Shirley is floored by the volume and the presence of rare antidotes. She can't believe a weak novice gathered all of this alone. Our boy just shrugs it off, citing his history of surviving harsh environments and working without sleep. He presents his updated card. Now reflecting level 48, he points out a rule in the manual. By delivering a massive daily haul every morning, the clerk can finalize all her transactions early, effectively ending her workday. Shirley is ecstatic that her job is saved, and the two shake hands on a deal that solves both their problems. The new routine is like clockwork. At 6:00 a.m. sharp, the traveler delivers a mountain of herbs. They spend 3 hours sorting and chatting until 9:00 a.m., at which point he takes his pay and heads back to the wild. He spends the entire night harvesting, fueled by magic and a lack of sleep, repeating the cycle with industrial efficiency. At first, the locals mocked him as Herb Gramps, thinking he was just a gardener playing adventurer, but as they saw the constant rare hauls and watched him effortlessly slaughter a goblin pack, the mockery turned into genuine awe. Over 3 months, the nickname became a title of respect for the world's most effective gatherer. Finally, our boy hits his milestone. He's saved enough to change his destiny. The salaryman breaks the news to Shirley that he's scaling back his field work. She immediately panics, assuming he's quitting the guild entirely. He tries to explain that he's just financially stable now, but she argues that even with his earnings, he's too young to retire. He has to clarify that he isn't retiring, he's just pivoting. The plan is to open his own shop using his savings. Shirley is shocked, as few adventurers ever successfully transition to business. She tries to convince him that with his power, he could be a legendary high-rank hero. Yuichi counters that high-rankers just spend their lives risking death for a reputation. He'd much rather be alive and comfortable than a dead legend. The receptionist admits that things will be lonely without him around. She confesses that she took this job specifically to help great adventurers like him. Our boy offers his thanks, but she hides her red face behind her clipboard, muttering that while she'll keep working. Losing her best customer feels like the wind has been sucked out of her sails. When the man asks if he's really been that good of a partner, Shirley snaps that he's the best. She stands tall and declares that his work ethic, skill, and rare capital city manners make him special. She notes that while high-ranking nobles might share those traits, they never step foot in a common guild. Leaning forward with a bright red face, she shouts that to her. He is the ideal adventurer. Otoki Yuichi bows deep, thanking Shirley for accepting a creepy-looking guy like him without a second thought. Shirley immediately waves him off, insisting he isn't creepy. In fact, she thinks he's actually on the cute side. Our boy is floored, having never once considered his face to be cute by any stretch of the imagination. When he asks for her reasoning, she lists his features with brutal honesty. Dark circles, sunken eyes, messy hair, a skinny frame, and a permanent slouch. He has to admit she's accurate, but he's still lost on how that adds up to adorable. Shirley just beams, explaining that he's the spitting image of a cave dwarf. Confused by the comparison, the kid tries to search his perfect record skill for info on cave dwarves, but he comes up empty. Shirley is shocked he hasn't heard of them, explaining they're a fictional race from children's fairy tales. She describes them as little beings with mysterious powers who love humans and look out for those having a hard time. Since he's a transplant from another world, the whole story is news to him. She adds that because they're seen as friendly neighbors, people naturally feel at ease around anyone who looks like them. Apparently, our boy has already become a hot topic among the guild receptionists because of his resemblance to the little creatures. Yuichi realizes his haggard appearance is actually a secret weapon in this world. If people naturally warm up to him because he looks like a fairy tale dwarf, it'll make running his future shop a breeze. Later, when he finally sees a picture book of these creatures, he's stunned by the likeness and jokingly wonders if he should be worried about copyright infringement. Back at the guild, he approaches the counter to request the official ID needed to buy property. While Shirley prepares the paperwork, he notices a flashy girl walking past, reflecting on how many people turn to adventuring just to survive. Our boy's attention locks onto the blonde girl. Her once gentle eyes have turned sharp and freezing cold, and though her skin is tanned and her hair bleached, he recognizes her instantly. It's his niece, Arisa. At a nearby counter, a receptionist is explaining the perks of the guild to her. The situation feels completely wrong. His niece was supposed to be safe at the palace as a member of the hero's party. Shirley interrupts his train of thought to tell him his ID is almost ready, excited that his dream of owning a shop is coming true, but he can't take his eyes off the girl. Haunted by the look in Arissa's eyes, the kid decides he needs to know the truth. He activates his eavesdropping skill, a mimicry ability taken from a monster called the Eared Wall Mimic. It allows him to pinpoint sound as long as he stays perfectly still, just like the predator that waits in dungeons to crush its prey. He hears the receptionist explaining that a guild card is her only way to get a room or buy property. Realizing his niece is genuinely trying to survive as an adventurer, he feels a weird sense of kinship, hoping that despite their history they can find a way to get along. Arisa is clearly out of patience, telling the receptionist she doesn't care about the rules as long as the work pays. She demands to sign up on the spot and begins filling out the forms. Watching from a distance, Yuichi wonders what could have possibly happened to get her kicked out of the palace. He can tell her reasons for being here are tragic, and it makes his blood boil. He thinks it's beyond cruel for the kingdom to drag a child from her home, only to toss her onto the streets the moment she isn't useful anymore. Our boy knows that unlike him, his niece is just a kid with zero survival skills. The thought of her starving on the streets is something he refused to allow. In his book, every child deserves to have a full stomach every single day. He watches her stand in front of the quest board, looking completely overwhelmed, while seasoned parties confidently snatch up the best missions. She's out of her depth, and it's painful to watch. The girl stares at the quest map in total confusion, quietly admitting to herself that she has no idea where to start. Her uncle notes that she can't even pick a mission, let alone finish one. Even the most basic herb-gathering jobs are outside the capital, a death sentence for a kid with no local knowledge. She hasn't even touched the beginner's manual, which explains why the staff were complaining about her. Suddenly, two sleazy adventurers approach her with greasy smiles, asking if the little lady needs a hand. She snaps at them to back off and mind their own damn business. The thugs tell the girl not to be so cold, claiming there's much easier work for a knockout like her than dirty adventuring. She screams at them to shut up, revealing she chose this life specifically to avoid that kind of talk. One of the men pins her against the wall, telling her to enjoy her attitude while it lasts. Yuichi watches the situation turn sour, realizing his niece is about to become their plaything if he doesn't step in. He isn't about to let that happen. Our boy walks straight into the middle of the confrontation, calmly asking if there's a problem. One of the thugs jumps, immediately recognizing the local celebrity known as Herb Gramps. Arisa just shifts her rage onto him, calling him a damn old man and asking what he wants. He just sighs, noting that she's as prickly as ever, and clearly hasn't let go of her grudge against him. Yuichi drops a hand on his niece's shoulder, informing the thugs that the girl is with him. He asks if they're still interested in helping her. Terrified of his reputation, the men quickly fold, stammering that they aren't stupid enough to mess with his friends before scurrying away. He knows his high rank and ties to elite adventurers did the heavy lifting here, as his personal presence alone wouldn't have been enough to scare them. While he reflects on the waste of energy, the girl just stands there, stunned. Arisa isn't ready to play nice, shouting that she doesn't forgive him just because he saved her. She blames him for her exile, but he keeps his cool, leading her to a bench so they can talk. As she avoids his gaze, he realizes her time at the palace must have been a nightmare. Unable to master her skills, she likely fell to the bottom of the social ladder, suffering constant mockery from the same boys who used to follow her around. The kid realizes his niece thinks she was exiled because he set a bad precedent for being useless. He sets the record straight. The royal court sees the summoned students as nothing but weapons. Anyone who isn't a top-tier asset gets discarded, meaning her fate was sealed whether he was there or not. The girl is shell-shocked by the truth, asking with a cold sweat if she would have been forced to become a killer if she had stayed. He gives it to her straight. That was exactly the plan. Yuichi tells the girl that the court's lack of vision was actually a blessing in disguise, as it kept her hands clean of the war. She breaks down into tears, sobbing that she'll just starve to death anyway if she can't work. She demands to know what he could possibly understand about her struggle. He looks at her with genuine kindness, promising that he knows exactly what she's going through, and that he's going to take care of her. The uncle explains his plan. He's been doing well as an adventurer and is about to buy a house to open a shop. He offers his niece a job as his live-in employee, meaning she'll have a roof over her head and a steady paycheck. He emphasizes that it's infinitely safer than adventuring and waits for her answer. Still guarded, the girl wonders why a total stranger would go to such lengths for her. Our boy tells the kid they aren't strangers at all, asking for her mother's name. When she confirms it's Nori, he reveals that Nori is his older sister, making him Arisa's maternal uncle. He tells her it's only right for him to look after his favorite niece. She's absolutely floored, pointing a trembling finger as the pieces click into place. She asks if he's really her big brother Yuichi, and he just smiles, relieved she finally knows who he is. Arisa can't wrap her head around it, screaming that his face is completely different. He explains that back then, he wasn't buried in work and actually slept, so his complexion wasn't this wrecked. She still insists he's a different person. To end the debate, he brings up their last summer vacation, reminding her of the time she ate too much shaved ice, crashed for a nap, and wet the bed. The mention of him having to clean up after her makes her face turn bright red, and she calls him an idiot for bringing up something so humiliating. Yuichi asks if she's finally convinced of his identity. She admits she believes him, but she's mourning the fact that her handsome uncle has turned into such a weird old man. Deep down, she admits he was her first love, which makes the transformation even harder to swallow. He ignores her cracks about his age and repeats the offer, asking her one more time to come work for him at the new shop. The girl realizes she's in no position to be picky, especially since she isn't cut out for the adventurer life. Despite her grumbling about him being an old man, she accepts the job. Our boy tells her he's looking forward to having her on the team, and they seal the deal with a handshake. She plays it cool, but the relief is obvious. With his new employee in tow, Yuichi heads to the real estate agency. The agent is stunned when she sees his letter of guarantee, noting it's a joint guarantee directly from the guild. She explains that the guild only does this for elite, high-rank adventurers they trust implicitly. Since the guild is on the hook for any issues, she treats him like royalty, praising him as a truly valued customer, while the kid just smiles through the flattery. The agent shows them the only property that fits his request. It's a 40-year-old building on Inn Street. She notes it's perfect for a tavern or an inn, but its location has kept buyers away. The uncle and his niece look over the floor plans for the 2 stories, which include a kitchen, a storage area, and a massive main floor. It's exactly what he was looking for. Our boy decides the place is perfect. figuring the foot traffic on In Street will be a gold mine. Even if the building is a bit crusty, he can use his enchantment skills to fix it up. The agent offers a discount for an immediate cash payment, and he agrees, even though the price will eat up 90% of his last 3 months of work. When he pulls out a magic storage bag, the agent's jaw drops. She's never seen such a luxury item. He credits his master for the gift and signs the papers, considering the shop a total steal. The agent assumes the kid must be the apprentice of a court magician to have such a bag, and he confirms his master is indeed one, though he keeps Shariva's name out of it. He reflects on his brief but intense training, knowing he's lucky to be called an apprentice at all. He also suspects Shirley pulled some strings at the guild for that guarantee, but he keeps his mouth shut to keep the deal moving. The agent is just glad the pieces of his story finally fit together. Yuichi thanks the agent for her help, and she returns the favor, glad the land is finally being used. She hands over the keys, telling him the place is his as of today. He's ecstatic to finally own a slice of In Street. He heads to the building with Arisa, noting that she's been on her best behavior and will likely be a natural at customer service once they open for business. Standing inside their new headquarters, the girl asks what he's going to do with all the empty rooms. He explains they'll be for storage and future staff, telling her to pick whichever one she wants. She claims the room in the very back. He's relieved to see the previous owners left the beds and furniture behind. While his niece starts making herself at home, our boy grabs a broom and gets to work cleaning the rest of the building. Yuichi greets his niece as she comes downstairs, telling her she's just in time. She asks what the old man wants, and he explains he has a task for her. He points to a table, planning to rip the legs off and use the top for a shop sign. She's skeptical, telling him to handle the heavy stuff, but then realizes he wants her to do the lettering. She teases him, asking if he's trying to use cute girl handwriting to attract customers like her old part-time jobs did. He just smiles, keeping his real reasons a mystery. The girl relents, deciding she owes him that much for the free housing. Our boy gets a bit flustered and announces the name of the store, the Cave Dwarf's Magic Item Shop. As she prepares to write, she asks what a cave dwarf even is. He explains it's a race from a local fairy tale, figuring the brand recognition will be great for business. Our boy hits the guild for the 3rd time that day. Shirley calls out to Herb Gramps, asking what he needs now. He tells her he's looking for magic stones, which catches her off guard, since people usually only sell them there. He clarifies that he actually wants the junk stones, the ones completely drained of power. Shirley is baffled, wondering why anyone would want literal trash. The goddess chimes in with a lecture, explaining that magic stones are organs found inside monsters. They act as mana batteries that keep the creatures running, much like how human body fat stores calories. Normally, even after the monster is dead and the stone is pulled out, a little bit of juice stays inside. The lecture continues, explaining that the guild buys these stones to consolidate their power into larger, market-ready batteries, tossing the small, drained ones. Back at the desk, Yuichi tells Shirley he wants the junk stones for magic circles. Since they're just garbage to the guild, she tells him to take as many as he can carry. He bows, promising to take every single stone they've got in the back. Shirley drags out several heavy sacks, asking if that'll do the trick. Yuichi is grateful, and she admits it's a win-win since it saves the guild a trip to the dump. He stuffs the bags into his magic storage, once again thanking Shariva for the gift that stays light no matter how much he packs. He heads out for the day while Shirley waves him goodbye. By the time our boy gets back to the shop, the sun is setting. His niece is waiting and immediately starts complaining about being hungry. Realizing she hasn't eaten all day, he hands her some coins to go get whatever she wants. She's confused by the currency, so he explains the breakdown of copper, silver, and gold, noting she's holding the equivalent of about 1,000 yen. Arisa remarks that having a universal currency shows just how much power the kingdom really has. She guesses the king's arrogance comes naturally with that kind of reach. When she asks how an old man like him knows so much, he tells her he spent his time at the castle reading every book in sight. She calls him a gloomy nerd and heads out for dinner. Once she's gone, the shopkeeper gets to work, sketching out a prototype magic circle on some scrap wood. The kid finishes the diagram, noting that magic circles in this world are surprisingly simple. He grabs one of the junk stones and prepares to bind 2 specific skills to it. He pours his mana into the circle, successfully enchanting the stone. It begins to glow in his hand, and he's eager to see if his little experiment actually works. To test the stone's light absorption, the kid stands in the middle of a busy street holding it up to the sky. Passers-by give him a wide berth, and a mother tells her kid to look away from the weirdo. He's a bit embarrassed, but the high foot traffic confirms his shop is in a great spot. He covers the stone and confirms it soaked up the sunlight perfectly, emitting a soft, steady glow. He explains the combo. Luminescence to absorb sunlight and glow, a skill from Dungeon Moss that turns off when exposed to other magic. The two work in perfect sync, creating a clean light source. He spends the next few hours mass-producing the stones until his boxes are overflowing. However, his focus shifts back to worry when he realizes his niece still hasn't come home. Yuichi heads into town, knowing it's no place for a girl like Arisa after dark. He finds her cornered by a group of thugs led by Kanzaki Tatsuya. The leader is mocking her, telling her she'll never make it as an adventurer and should just quit. She insists she has a real job, but the thugs just sneer, offering her better work. One of them even asks if she's just the old man's whore, leaving the uncle absolutely livid. The girl spots her uncle and immediately grabs his arm, begging him to get rid of these guys. He feels a spark of pride being relied on by his niece, but his focus stays on the trash in front of him. Tatsuya calls him a bastard and tells Herb Gramps to stop playing hero. The group threatens to rearrange his face, claiming they found the girl first and accusing him of acting like a big shot. The kid realizes the thugs only backed off earlier because they thought the girl was his girlfriend. Now that they know their family, they think she's open season. He sighs at their stupidity and repeats that she's his niece and under his protection. Tatsuya tells him to shove it, arguing he isn't her parent. Yuichi counters that he isn't about to let his niece be defiled by scumbags who suggest prostitution. He genuinely wonders if they're too dense to understand a simple warning. He decides it's time to squash these pests before they become a recurring problem. He looks them dead in the eye and tells them if they think he has no right to interfere, they're welcome to try force. He tells them to do as they please, reminding them that they're the ones picking this fight. Tatsuya boils over, calling the old man cocky, but Yuichi calmly corrects him. He's just looking down on them. Tatsuya snaps and lunges, telling the weed picker to know his place. He puts everything he's got into a punch aimed right at our boy's jaw. Arisa screams in terror, certain that the old man is about to be leveled by the blow. The punch connects, but our boy doesn't even flinch. He notices his niece is genuinely worried, which is a sweet change of pace with his current stats. These guys literally can't scratch him. Tatsuya freezes, his fist still pressed against Yuichi's face, unable to comprehend why the guy didn't go flying. The thug pulls back, sweating and stuttering as his brain tries to process the impossible. The shopkeeper mocks the pathetic punch, joking that if the guy was just trying to brush a mosquito off him, he would have thanked him. Tatsuya is trembling with rage, demanding to know what's wrong with him. Yuichi just says he's an old man who pulls weeds, which is still a step up from a weakling who can't even manage that. Blinded by rage, Tatsuya screams that he'll kill him and launches another attack. A flurry of punches hits our boy, but he just stands there critiquing the effort. He asks if the guy studied acrobatics instead of fighting, because the hits feel lighter than air. Tatsuya is gasping for breath, swearing he'll kill him. Yuichi tells him good job before deciding the demonstration is over. He clenches his fist, and the look in his eyes sends a jolt of pure horror through the thug. With a single effortless blow, the shopkeeper sends Tatsuya crashing into the dirt. He looks at the rest of the pack and asks if anyone else wants to lay a hand on his niece. The remaining thugs are paralyzed with fear, scrambling to grab their leader before vanishing into the night. Our boy brushes himself off, feeling refreshed. Sometimes, a little brute force is exactly what the doctor ordered when dealing with trash. Arisa is wide-eyed, demanding to know how the old man got that strong. He claims he's just been adventuring for 3 months, but she knows that's a lie. No normal person grows that fast. She tells him to stop treating her like a toddler and give her the truth. He sighs and pulls out his status card, revealing his level 112 rank. The girl is absolutely floored, unable to believe the insane numbers in front of her. The uncle asks his niece why she couldn't handle those punks herself since she's a hero. She tells him to shut up and shows him her own card. Even at level 8, her magic is already an A rank, which beats his. However, her physical stats are a measly E, average for a normal man, but not enough to fight trained adventurers. He tries to be encouraging, but she tells him he needs to be way more humble now that he's officially overpowered. Arisa notes that even her uncle resorts to violence when it suits him. He admits he's become a lot more capable since arriving in this world, and he doesn't even try to hide his pride when she asks if he's bragging. She kicks him in the leg and calls him gross, telling him to knock it off. He just laughs, saying he wants his niece to give him more credit. He clarifies that he only plays the arrogant card with people who deserve a reality check, a dream he's had since his days as a convenience store clerk. The girl is lost on what being a clerk has to do with beating up thugs. He explains that any retail worker holds a deep grudge against the underlings of an evil god, leaving her more confused than before. Then, he smiles and gives her his word. If anything ever happens, he'll be there in a heartbeat to protect her. Arisa blushes and quietly thanks him, finally feeling like she can breathe easy. Arisa is a blushing mess, her hands clutched to her chest as she stares at the floor. She can't deny our boy is strong and kind, but she's still wishing his face matched her big brother Yuichi's. In her mind, that face would make him the perfect package. The old man notices her acting strange and asks if she said something, which only makes her explode with embarrassment. She screams it's nothing and nails him with a sharp strike to the ribs. As he rubs his ear and wonders why she's so violent, he decides he'll just have to be even nicer to win her over eventually. Standing outside their new storefront, Otoki asks if the sign is finally ready. Arisa proudly points to the entrance, showing off the name, The Cave Dwarf's Little Magic Item Shop, featuring a tiny dwarf illustration. Our boy admits he originally wanted something simpler, but he keeps that to himself. The creative name actually makes the place look a lot cuter, and he's happy with the twist. The girl stands there with her arms crossed, looking incredibly smug about her contribution to the branding. He keeps praising the sign, noting how welcoming it makes the shop feel. Arisa reminds him that he's the one who asked for cute, so she just took it to the next level with the lettering. Our boy thinks the place has real charm now, and since he supposedly looks like a cute dwarf himself, he figures the lady customers will love it. She's losing her patience though, demanding to see the actual products he mentioned. With a chuckle, he pulls out a large, jagged crystal and announces that their inventory has officially arrived. Arisa looks at the rock and asks if he's literally just selling stones. He explains it's a light stone, though it needs a kickstart. Our boy channels a bit of mana, and the thing suddenly erupts with a bright, steady glow that catches her off guard. He explains the light can be toggled at will, meaning they can stay open 24 hours a day. The girl is baffled by the idea of night shifts, but he just smiles. With these stones, he's planning to recreate the convenience store model, open all day, every day. Since convenience store work is the only thing he really knows, our boy figures he'll start there and adapt based on what this world needs. Arisa snaps, shouting that she doesn't care about his work history and demanding to know the actual point of the shop. He just ignores the outburst and shows her a crate overflowing with magic stones. She's skeptical about whether lights will sell, but he promises the demand will be explosive. Even if they're expensive, he's confident they'll fly off the shelves. Arisa admits the business side is over her head, so she leaves the strategy to the old man. He promises to make sure she's taken care of financially, which earns him a grin. They both need money to survive, after all. He then nudges her toward a magic circle on the floor, telling her it's time to clock in. The job is simple. She just needs to put a stone in the circle and pump in some mana. Once it starts glowing, she cuts the flow and the enchantment is set. The girl thinks the work sounds easy enough and tells him to leave it to her. He instructs her to pile up the finished stones once the light fades and keep the cycle going. As she works on the floor, her sitting position makes our boy flush deep red. He looks away, terrified that if he says anything, she'll take it as harassment. She notices him stalling and tells him to move it, so he snaps back to work. They labor late into the night, successfully enchanting every piece of junk they found. The next day, the kid hits an adventurous supply shop to research the competition. He's impressed by the variety, seeing gear for everyone from rookies to C-rankers. Suddenly, the goddess pops up to give a little lecture, starting with the basic torch. She explains that while they're cheap up front, they're disposable garbage that ends up costing way more in the long run. The goddess notes that adventurers like torches because they can be tossed to free up hands or used as a desperate weapon. Oil lamps are bottom tier. They break easily and have a nasty habit of starting accidental fires. She then shows off a mana lamp. It's a popular choice but insanely expensive. Most people who buy one end up hawking it later because the magic stones for upkeep are a wallet killer. These are strictly for the high-rolling top rankers. The crowd favorite is the luminous moss lamp, which just needs the moss kept alive. It's simple and has a loyal following. She also mentions weird niche items like club torches, but nobody buys those because changing the oily cloth is a pain. Our boy finishes his scouting and compares the data. Magic lamps are several gold coins, moss lamps go for a few silver, and torches are a measly 10 copper. He weighs his pricing strategy, knowing his stones beat the pants off magic lamps. However, charging gold coins would be a mistake. He wants everyone using these for daily life. He can't go too cheap either, or he'll crash the market and end up stuck mass-producing them forever. To avoid making enemies of other craftsmen, he settles on a price between 10 and 20 silver, scaling it based on the size and light capacity. With the prices set, our boy heads to the guild to snag more junk stones and start some marketing. He spots Gaius and asks him to test a new tool. The big guy is skeptical, thinking it's just a common rock, but Otoki tells him to give it a little mana. Gaius humors him and is stunned when the stone blazes with light. He's immediately hooked on the idea of a light source he can toggle with his own power. Gaius laughs, loving the timing since he was just about to head into a dungeon. Our boy asks for a senior's feedback, and Gaius wonders if the thing is disposable. Not even close. The light dies when the mana runs out, but the stone is designed to recharge in the sun. As long as it gets some daylight, it'll last forever. Gaius stares at it in pure shock, realizing a permanent, rechargeable light source is a complete game changer. Gaius slaps him on the back and promises a full report after the raid. Our boy thanks him, knowing he just checked off a major milestone. The C-ranker is the perfect walking billboard. Having a respected veteran vouch for the product gives it instant street cred. He knows the big guy loves to brag, so it's only a matter of time before he starts showing off his new toy to everyone at the guild. Gaius waves off, shouting that he's keeping the stone for now. Otoki bows and says goodbye to Shirley at the counter as she waves him out. He figures he can leave the hype building to Gaius, while he focuses on sourcing more junk and scaling production. With the successful launch, the first volume of his journey wraps up as he gears up for the next phase of the business. The goddess drops a preview for the next volume, wondering if the Gaius plan will actually pay off. We shift to the hero party, where Kanehama Keiichi is looking grim. He and the other heroes have finally hit the front lines against the Demon Lord's army, screaming for the kingdom. He knows the only reason he's still breathing is because of the cheat skills the goddess gifted him. Still, he can't get used to the sickening feeling of his blade carving through flesh. The goddess notes the hero's party is struggling and checks in on the outcasts. Back at the shop, Arisa is rocking a maid outfit, taking orders and slinging light stones like a pro. Our boy is dressed as a waiter, grinning as the gold rolls in. The girl thinks the promotion worked because Gaius is a total foodie, but the goddess is lost. She wonders if this is a restaurant or a convenience store now, admitting she has no clue what these people are doing anymore. The goddess asks the question. Everyone's thinking, did the old man finally get lucky? We see Shariva looking disheveled and blushing, stammering about how amazing he was and how she's never felt like that before. The goddess loses it, demanding to know who was the passive one. But the reality is way more wholesome. He's just sitting there with his hands together, thanking her for the meal. They were literally just having a nice dinner together. The preview moves to Tiana and her sister clinging to the MC. Tiana says she feels so at peace around him, but little Joan pouts that it's not fair to hog him. She demands to sleep with her uncle too. The girls look at him, and Joan insists on sleeping by his side. She mentions her mom said he might be a lolicon, so she figures she better seduce him properly, leaving our boy in a very awkward spot. Another woman laughs and tells him he needs to take responsibility. If he doesn't take them as mistresses, people will think they're broken. Marguerite is seen blushing, deciding she'll wait until he's famous before she makes her move. Arisa is in the back looking like she's about to commit a homicide, promising to kill him. The goddess waves goodbye, wondering why he's such a magnet for trouble as she teases the next volume. A small illustration shows our boy face down on the ground, looking absolutely drained. There's a massive magic stone resting on his back like a boulder, literally weighing him down while he tries to catch a break. Otoki takes a stroll through the shopping district to see what's hot. He wants to know what sells so he can stock his own shelves. He stops at a specialty robe shop, and the goddess appears to explain that these aren't just fashion, they're survival gear. They protect from scrapes, bugs, and rain, keeping adventurers dry and shelter them from the elements so they don't drop from exhaustion in the field. He heads inside and asks the elderly shopkeeper about a specific robe. She laughs, calling it a piece of junk made from literal rags that barely counts as clothing. He's stunned to find out it only costs 10 copper. The lady explains that at that price, people don't care if it's garbage. He picks it up, expecting it to fall apart, but she notes that broke newbies buy them as a desperate fix when they've spent every cent on gear. The shopkeeper explains these are made by kids at the orphanage during sewing practice. Since the material is scrap and the labor is free, the cost is basically zero. The 10 coins just go into the kids' pockets. Our boy realizes the whole setup is actually a charity project. It gives the orphans a trade and a bit of cash, while providing a cheap safety net for poor adventurers until they can afford something better. He tells the lady he's learned something valuable and decides to buy a robe to show his thanks. She's surprised and warns him not to come back whining when the junk fails him. He tells her he has a plan and asks her to pack the cotton and linen robes into his bag. When he opens his item storage, the woman's jaw hits the floor. She realizes he's loaded and asks if he's some secret millionaire, leaving him to awkwardly stumble over an explanation. Our boy settles into a steady routine over the next few days. He hits the guild for scrap stones, enchants them back at the shop, and spends his days prepping the storefront. By the time the grand opening looms, he and Arisa are actually on speaking terms. Seeing her act naturally around him feels like huge progress. She used to be so guarded. It makes him feel nostalgic for when she was little, but his creepy smiling face ruins the moment. She calls him a weirdo, and he worries he's back to square one. Arisa admits the kid is doing a decent job, but he tells her he's got it from here. He explains his disposal skill is about to come in handy. When she asks how he's going to hang the sign, he suddenly spits a thick liquid onto the back of it. She's instantly repulsed, screaming that she's going to kill him. He tries to explain there's a deep technical reason for the spit, but she's not having it. She just keeps yelling about how gross he is and telling him to drop dead. He apologizes, but insists it was necessary. Arisa is still gagging, unable to get past the gross out factor. He points to the sign and explains that the spit is actually a skill called adhesive fluid. Once it dries, it's sturdier than any glue. She just gives him a blank stare, completely unimpressed. He continues, saying he's using it to mount the sign, but she refuses to accept it. Despite her protests, he nervously asks her exactly where the sign should go. Otoki basically has to beg her for help. He can't get the sign level on his own and needs her to hold one side. She gives in with a heavy sigh, still muttering about how disgusting he is. Together, they press the wood against the stone wall. The fluid starts to set, oozing out the edges as it creates a permanent bond. Finally, the sign for the Cave Dwarf's Magic Item Shop is officially mounted, complete with its little dwarf mascot. With the sign finally in place, the shop is ready. Arisa stands outside and stretches toward the bright sky, shouting her hopes for a successful launch. Our boy stands behind her, scratching his head and smiling. He's feeling the same way. Now they just need customers to actually show up. The doors are open, but the shop is a ghost town. Arisa leans on the counter, asking why it's so eerily quiet. He tries to play it cool, asking if getting paid to sit around isn't the dream. She snaps, pointing out that if they stay in the red, she's never getting her salary. He admits that if the drought continues, the shop is toast. She collapses onto a bench, sighing that she shouldn't have put her faith in a washed-up old guy like him. He tells her not to panic, promising that word of the light magic will spread soon and save her livelihood. He rolls up his sleeves and flexes, trying to look reliable, though she just looks confused by the victory pose. Internally, his real plan is already moving. By selling junk stones, he's creating a buzz. He knows the rumor of the weird shop will eventually reach Gaius, and once the C-ranker starts hyping the stones, the floodgates will open. It's a self-running marketing machine. He also plans to sell rag robes to the broke rookies to round things out. Right on cue, Gaius bursts in, laughing about the location. He mentions the rumor of an old man who looks like a cave dwarf selling trash at premium prices. Our boy is thrilled to hear the gossip is spreading, which leaves the girl even more baffled. Ignoring her, he asks Gaius what he can do for him today. Gaius is here to drop some feedback. The light stone is a masterpiece. He's been using it non-stop, and now all his buddies are begging for their own. Arisa is shocked by the enthusiasm. Our boy reveals that every piece of junk in the shop is actually one of those light stones. He tells Gaius the small ones start at 10 silver, and the big guy's jaw drops at the revelation that he's standing in a gold mine. Gaius immediately grabs 3 large stones at 20 silver a pop. He says this kind of utility is worth 100 coins easily. Otoki pockets the 60 silver, thanking him for the business. Gaius double checks if they're ready to go, and our boy invites him to test one out right there. The adventurer is blown away. As he leaves, he promises to tell everyone he knows, and our boy knows the hype train is officially leaving the station. After Gaius's visit, the shop explodes. By evening, the store is swarming with adventurers tired of hauling heavy torches. Our boy and Arisa are a blur, ringing up customers for hours on end. The girl is drowning in the rush, barely keeping up with the chaos. When night finally falls and the crowd thins, she collapses onto the counter in total exhaustion. He lets her sleep while he cleans and restocks. Perks of a skill that means he never needs to close his eyes. A week later, the initial rush starts to cool down. The stones are durable, so people don't need refills immediately. 2 weeks in, a group of young rookies catches his eye. He asks if they need help, and they admit they were looking for the famous light stones, but once they see the price tags, their faces fall. It's way out of their league, and they look absolutely dejected, thinking they'll never afford such high-end gear. This is exactly what he was waiting for. Rookies are the best walking ads. He asks about their budget, and they admit they only have 10 silver between them, which they still need for robes. He pulls out the rag robes and tells them to take a look. They're skeptical, wanting gear that won't shred in a fight. They like the forest colors and the pockets, but they're still on the fence about the quality of the junk. Time for the hard sell. Our boy looks them in the eye and declares these aren't rags. They're magic items. The kids are confused. So he explains these robes are built for extreme durability. He decides to show, not tell, and slips one on. Then, to their horror, he tells the lead boy to take a full-strength swing at his chest with a sword. The rookies are frozen, thinking he's lost his mind. The kid refuses to swing, but our boy insists. He flashes his status plate, showing off level 112 and B-rank physical stats. He tells them a rookie's swing won't even tickle. Their eyes go wide with hero worship. They ask why someone this powerful is running a shop instead of raiding dungeons. He gives a distant look and claims he used to be an adventurer long ago, which is technically true, even if long ago was just last week. He tells them he's here now for reasons. He tells the kid to stop overthinking it and give it everything he's got. Trusting the magic item, the boy draws his sword and lunges, slashing Otoki across the chest with a yell. The blade hits the robe and stops dead without leaving a single mark. The group goes wild, shouting about how awesome it is. He just looks at them calmly and asks if they finally see the value of what he's selling. He explains the enchantments: shape memory, blade resistance, and impact absorption. This thing will outlast any normal gear on the market. He mentions he used a similar robe for his entire career, which makes them even more desperate to buy. When they ask for the price, he admits these are just prototypes, so he hasn't even set a retail value yet. The kids are stunned, thinking they've stumbled onto a once-in-a-lifetime deal. He offers them a steal, 3 robes and a light stone for their entire 10 silver budget. They're overjoyed, bowing and thanking him like he's a god. He watches them leave, knowing that seeing rookies in these rags will turn heads. Once other adventurers realize these things are indestructible, they'll be knocking down his door to get their own. His next big payday is already in the bag. The day after selling the robes, he leaves Arisa in charge and heads out. He finds a massive building with a winged statue, wondering if it's some religious outreach project. The large yard is perfect for kids to run around. As he's taking in the scene, a woman in a nun's habit approaches and asks if she can help him with something. She introduces herself as Isabella, the director of the orphanage. Our boy introduces himself and his shop, mentioning he heard they sew robes for local stores. He tells her he's interested in setting up a supply line for his own business. Isabella's face lights up with pure joy. She's thrilled at the prospect and invites him inside to talk business over tea. She suggests her office to avoid the noise of the kids. Otoki notes they seem full of life, which he considers a great sign. Isabella is touched, admitting that she appreciates the kindness since most merchants just get annoyed by the presence of children. They continue their walk through the facility, heading toward her office to hammer out the details. Once they're settled with some tea, Isabella asks if he's familiar with their work. He confirms he's already bought a few and sells them as magic items. She's thankful but feels she needs to be honest. They only use recycled scraps. He tells her it's fine, and reveals he plans to provide the high-quality cloth himself. This catches her completely off guard. He explains the deal. He provides the cloth for free, and the kids sew it. He'll pay a fair wage based on production and quality. Isabella is floored by the generosity and eagerly agrees. The price he sets is so high she's almost afraid to take it, but they settle on about half the retail price of a standard robe. He's satisfied. The negotiations are a total success. He asks if the contract is acceptable and she thanks him profusely. Internally, he's doing the math. His costs are less than 10% of the sale price, giving him a massive margin. He sees the high pay as an investment in the kids, hoping to mold them into a future workforce. He frames the high price as a donation to make a good impression. With a handshake, the deal is signed. Before heading out, he asks to meet the staff, Isabella is happy to show off the kids, calling them energetic and hardworking. He watches them with a smile, but his mind is on the long game. He's going to educate them and turn them into a workforce perfectly tailored for his company. He knows it sounds a bit like a wicked scheme, but they get jobs and an education, and his business grows. It's a win-win. Down at the orphanage, Isabella introduces our boy to a pack of energetic kids, explaining that he's here to buy the gear they sew during their lessons. One kid immediately labels him a cave dwarf, while the others buzz with curiosity about who the new mister is. The old man confirms the deal, telling the little ones he's stocking his shop with their robes and providing all the materials himself to ensure top-tier quality. Isabella chimes in, noting he's even donating the cloth so they can ditch the old rags and work with proper fabrics. A young girl named Rosa is floored by the news, thanking him like he's just performed a miracle. Isabella points out that Rosa is a natural-born leader among the kids. She's the whole reason they started sewing robes in the first place. The old man realizes she's the linchpin of his future production line and decides it's time to win her over. He asks if he can jump into the children's games, and Isabella encourages it, calling it the shortcut to making friends. When he introduces himself, our boy tells the group they can just call him Mr. or Old Man if his name is too much of a tongue twister. The kids don't need a second invitation and start cheering for the old man. The game of tag kicks off with the kids shouting that they're going to hunt the mister down. Our boy effortlessly slips past a surprise attack, joking that whoever bags the cave dwarf gets to be number one for the day. The children are blown away by his speed, laughing as they struggle to keep up. He strikes a flex pose, playfully daring the little ones to come and get him. He even ups the stakes, promising a nice prize for the hero who catches the dwarf. The kids grind to a halt in awe, dreaming of the reward and screaming for candy. While the children burn off their endless energy, our boy notes how lively the place is. Isabella agrees, admitting that their spirit is what keeps her going. He pivots back to business, asking for more dirt on the sewing prodigy. Isabella shares a somber detail. Rosa's mother taught her the craft before she was orphaned, and the girl hasn't stopped sewing since she arrived. It clicks for him. Her obsession with the work isn't just talent, it's the only connection she has left to her past. Our boy asks if Rosa's loss was recent, and Isabella gives a heavy nod. She explains the grim reality of the era. The war against the demon lord is an orphan-making machine, constantly swallowing fathers at the front. This leaves mothers to struggle alone until they collapse from overwork or illness. Looking at the sea of faces, he realizes the orphanage is bursting at the seams. It's as clear as day. The more the war drags on, the more these kids are left to rot in the overflow. The old man realizes the orphan count is only going up as long as the world is on fire. He figures there's no harm in putting that potential labor force to use, especially if it gives the kids a future, and he treats them right. He asks Isabella if there are any other standouts in the bunch. She mentions one child with a green thumb for flowers and another with serious leadership chops, pointing out a boy named Joan who's currently directing the chaos of their... Our boy confirms that Joan is the same kid who dragged him into tag. He starts mapping out a plan to turn these kids into specialized professionals. Since he expects his shop to explode in scale, he wants to groom future manufacturers right here. While Rosa is already set as his primary seamstress, he envisions the flower-loving kid handling medicinal herbs, and someone like Joan eventually running the logistics for procurement and delivery. The old man decides he needs to sink deep roots into this orphanage to fuel his future schemes. He plans to donate books and provide enough financial backing to turn these kids into elite assets. Once the business is wrapped, he heads back to the shop, only to find two very familiar faces waiting for him. Shariva greets him with her usual high energy, while Markarine admits she's stunned. He's already managed to set up a shop and a lifestyle in such a short time. The bombshell instructor, Shariva, immediately latches onto our boy, claiming she missed his scent. As Markarine looks on with a smirk, Arisa stands there with her jaw on the floor. The girl asks the old man how on earth he knows these two legends. He gives Shariva a head pat and explains that both women were his benefactors at the castle. He admits he owes the mage a debt he probably can't ever fully pay back. Arisa is still reeling, pointing out that these women were the instructors for the heroes, figures she wasn't even allowed to approach. Our boy plays it cool, but internally he reflects on how ruthless the kingdom was to discard useless heroes like him. He can't help but worry about the other students still trapped in the palace like prisoners. Meanwhile, Shariva is completely distracted, purring about how much she loves getting her head patted by him. Shariva keeps nuzzling into his hand, but she suddenly flips a switch and gets serious. She cuts straight to the chase, asking if he's willing to sell his light magic stones to the state. The sudden jump from playful affection to high-level government procurement catches our boy off guard. The instructor explains that the military is desperate for those stones at the front lines. Our boy realizes word of his inventory is spreading faster than expected, and while this is the break he wanted, the pace is breakneck. He tells her he's in, but he has conditions. Shariva promises to make anything happen, given the massive quantity they need. He requests an installment delivery schedule, explaining that a bulk order of that size would wipe out his operating costs and paralyze the shop. Our boy adds one more demand. He wants the state to pony up an investment if they expect him to keep delivering high-end magic items. Shariva is confused, wondering if the massive sales from the stones aren't enough. He tells her flatly that they won't be. Markarine chimes in, noting the military needs thousands of units, which would net him a profit of 1,000 gold coins. She can't wrap her head around why he'd still be asking for more cash. Arisa leans in, telling the old man that with 1,000 gold coins, he could retire and never lift a finger again. Our boy just looks down, realizing none of them see the big picture. He decides it's time for a reality check. He reminds them that this isn't peaceful Japan. They were summoned for a war, a fact Arisa claims she already understands. Our boy asks Arisa if she honestly believes a pile of gold in a war-torn country guarantees safety. He leaves her speechless as he explains the volatility of wartime economics. If the Demon Lord wins, the currency becomes toilet paper. He points out that 1,000 gold coins only converts to about 100 million yen, hardly enough to sustain a luxury lifestyle or long-term security in a world where the value of gold can crash overnight. The old man argues that even if the country holds, it doesn't offer the safety they took for granted back home. He reminds Arisa of the local public safety, or lack thereof. She looks crushed as he brings up the time she was nearly cornered by adventurers. In this world, that kind of danger is a Tuesday, and even 10,000 gold coins can't buy back the peace of mind they lost when they were summoned. Markarine asks if his end goal is just to live as a regular citizen. Our boy admits that's the dream, but his standards for ordinary are on a different level than this world's peasants. He describes their old world as a place so peaceful that violent thugs like adventurers didn't even exist. Instead, small elite forces protected the nation with tech that made heroes look like kids playing with sticks. He goes on to explain that back home, war was avoided because the cost was always higher than the profit. Mutually assured destruction kept things civil. People lived in a world where food and shelter were guaranteed, and nobody starved. The knight, Markarine, is visibly shaken, finding the idea of such a utopia almost impossible to grasp. He sees her skepticism, realizing his explanation sounds like a fairy tale. The old man explains that the very concept of time feels different here. He uses bread as an analogy. In their world, having bread tomorrow was a certainty. Here, the bread you eat today might be your last. Security was a fundamental right they owned from birth, and he has no intention of stopping until he gets that right back. Markarine reflects on how the other heroes were always whining despite their luxury, and she realizes their behavior makes sense if they were raised in the paradise he's describing. She asks if he's chasing that same standard, and he doesn't blink. He tells her a few thousand gold coins is a joke. It's not nearly enough to build the lifestyle he's after. Shoriva gets curious, asking what a satisfying life actually looks like to him. Markarine wonders what kind of massive project he's cooking up that requires state-level funding. Our boy decides to lay his cards on the table. He demands absolute security and a standard of living that matches the world he left behind. The old man admits this world has its charms, but it's a dump compared to the safety of home. Shoriva pats his head, realizing just how obsessed he is with the concept of safety. He agrees, pointing out the two biggest threats to his peace, the ongoing war and the fact that scumbags like adventurers are allowed to roam the streets unchecked. Arisa notes that he clearly thinks adventurers are the lowest of the low. Our boy doesn't sugarcoat it, calling them the local equivalent of the Yakuza, thugs who profit from violence. Arisa can't really argue with the logic. He tells them to drop the small talk, declaring there is only one way to truly secure the safety he wants. With a look of cold, hard determination, the old man reveals his hand. He states his ultimate ambition clearly. He is going to stop the war. Shoriva smirks at the sheer audacity of it, but our boy isn't joking. He sees it as a necessity. He thinks about the other Japanese kids who were dragged here and robbed of their lives. He tells himself that for their sake, he'll end a war or two. In his mind, that's exactly what it means to be an adult. Otoki Yuichi gazes at his hands, wondering if this hero kick is just a pathetic midlife crisis or a desperate bid for self-fulfillment. He admits it might be hypocritical, but he realizes he actually has the tools to pull it off. Staring at the magic stones, he thinks of all the useless skill pieces he's hoarded. If he stitches those discarded powers together, he might just turn this hero fantasy into a reality. Markarine's expression hardens. Our boy realizes his casual talk about ending the war probably touched a nerve with a veteran who manages the front lines. He doesn't flinch. When she warns him that stopping a war isn't some game, he stands his ground. He's not talking nonsense. He argues that for the humans to win, they simply need to be overwhelmingly powerful, and he's going to build the magic items to make it happen. Shoriva shoots the plan down instantly, listing the massive hurdles in his way. She doesn't believe he can make gear powerful enough to change the tide, especially since the heroes themselves are struggling. She points out the contradiction. It's not realistic to give everyone hero-level strength. And besides, he's only one man. He can't single-handedly arm an entire military. The instructor concludes that one craftsman can't tip the scales of a war. Our boy tells her he's got a few counterpoints ready to go. Shoriva invites him to try. Acting as the judge of her brilliant student, he admits her logistical concerns are valid, and mass-producing magic stones would be a nightmare. But he claims her perspective is fundamentally wrong. He doesn't need to be the one actually making the items. Shoriva asks if he's lost his mind, reminding him that his gear is special because of enchantment. That process requires a mountain of mana, and trying to enchant things without the specific skills would drain the national treasury dry. When she asks if he plans to source all that mana from stones, the old man confirms it, and says he's going to have other people manufacture them. The mage points out that even if he controlled the world's economy, he couldn't buy enough stones to fuel an army. Our boy calmly replies that he doesn't plan on buying a single one. This leaves her even more baffled, wondering if he intends to harvest them himself. He clarifies that he won't be doing that either, though in a roundabout way he will. The old man teases the clever mage, telling her she should be able to figure it out with a tiny hint. When she demands the clue, he tells her to rethink how a light magic stone actually works. Shariva, Markarine, and Arisa all rack their brains until the truth hits the instructor like a bolt of lightning. She lets out a scream, calling him a genius as the scale of his plan finally clicks. Shariva clutches her head in disbelief, shouting that our boy has just invented something that will rewrite the history of enchanting magic. She calls it dream technology, that everyone else was too blind to see. The old man is a bit put off by the intensity, wondering if she's praising him or calling him a lunatic. Shariva insists it's definitely praise, even if he is completely insane. The old man asks Shariva to break it down so the other two can follow. She agrees, wanting to double-check his logic aloud. She explains that a light magic stone relies on the glow and luminescence skills. Luminescence is a basic skill that sucks in light and converts it to mana, a concept researchers have been trying to weaponize using luminous moss for centuries. Shariva explains that the moss research was abandoned because the mana output wasn't worth the hassle. The moss ate its own mana and had zero storage capacity. Our boy realizes his innovation was actually a common idea that others had already failed at. The moss was too fragile, hated sunlight, and cost more to grow than it produced, leading everyone to conclude it was a dead end. The instructor points out that our boy's magic stones solve every single one of those problems. They have huge storage, don't consume their own energy, and last forever. Markarine realizes this means the stones are effectively infinite batteries. Shariva adds that since mana transfer tech is already standard, they can use these stones to suck power from the sun semi-permanently. Shariva is practically vibrating with excitement, realizing that the infinite mana problem for enchantment is finally solved. The old man confirms her theory and gives her a head pat, telling her she's sharp as ever. The young mage looks like she's on cloud 9, glowing under her master's approval. Our boy explains that with a bottomless energy supply, he doesn't need to do the heavy lifting himself. He proposes building massive factories dedicated to harvesting mana from these stones. He predicts that human magical output will explode, bypassing the energy bottleneck that's been holding back technology for ages. That's exactly why he needs the state's massive investment to build the infrastructure. The old man outlines his plan. First, build a massive mana extraction plant, then a magic item factory that can run without his direct input. He's going to churn out gear at a scale no human could ever match. Shariva confirms this is why the state's gold is necessary. Markarine sees the revolution coming, but she still questions if better gear is enough to actually end the war. Markarine argues that no matter how cracked the heroes are, they can't fight 100 million enemies at once. She uses a hypothetical army of 100 million goblins as an example. The heroes simply couldn't protect everyone. Even with every knight in the kingdom mobilized, they're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. A single knight might take down 30 goblins, but the math just doesn't add up for a total victory. The old man asks what happens if they field 100,000 knights, each equipped with gear that makes them as strong as a hero. Markarine thinks he's talking about fairy tales, but our boy is dead serious. He tells her his entire strategy is built on fixing the primary cause of military defeat, and the knight finally realizes he isn't just dreaming, he's planning. Markarine notes that quantity and quality are the two levers of war. Our boy explains that to win, you have to eliminate the vulnerabilities, starting with quantity. Instead of just making a bigger army, he's creating superior knights who can handle being outnumbered. By using magically boosted equipment, he can raise the entire army's response time and keep them from being steamrolled by brute force. Markarine realizes he's aiming for a strategic revolution, upgrading the whole board rather than just buffing a few tactical heroes. The old man smiles, glad she's catching on. Shariva then throws a curveball regarding quality. What if a monster appears that's so strong it can one-shot all the heroes and level the capital? Shariva asks how he deals with a monster that breaks the scales. Our boy says it's simple, either he or the heroes just need to get stronger. While Shariva thinks that's a reckless gamble, he explains that the board has changed. He looks at his niece and declares he's got a secret weapon in Arisa, leaving the girl completely blindsided. Arisa is flustered by the sudden pressure, but the old man insists that with her power anything is possible. He reminds everyone she's a hero with the calculator skill, the one that everyone dismissed as just being good at math. Shariva is intrigued and asks for the details. He confirms that this useless skill is the cornerstone of his entire plan. Our boy admits some of his plan is still based on hunches, so he can't give away the whole game yet. However, he needs to sell Shariva on the logic. He starts with a kindergarten-level question, asking her what 1 + 1 is. A small diagram pops up as the mage gives the obvious answer, 2. He presents a second puzzle. A boy has 1 apple and a girl has 2. The boy gets full on 1.5, the girl on half. Shariva correctly calculates that 1 apple is left over. The old man points out that while the first question was pure math, the second was a scenario. He asks how she reached the answer, and she says she just used simple mental arithmetic. Shariva finds the line of questioning a bit too philosophical, but she admits it was easier once she fitted the problem into a formula. Our boy explains that formulas are just a language designed to make numbers manageable. He asks her what the fundamental difference is between using a formula and just thinking it through. Shariva tells him to quit stalling and get to the point. The mage argues that formulas use established theory, while the other way relies on basic logic. Our boy asks if she thinks that's the only difference, then pivots back to her calculator skill. He asks what she thinks the true limit of that calculation is. Shariva starts to say it's just for math, but she stops as a terrifying new possibility enters her mind. Shariva realizes that even without a formula, she could extract one from a word problem. She admits that math is just a human system of thought. There's no rule saying a skill, something humans didn't create, would be restricted by human culture. The old man adds that while we invented the language of math, it doesn't exist in nature, but skills do. Otoki Yuichi isn't done with his lecture. He argues it is absurd to think a natural skill like calculator would be shackled by human limitations. Sure, people invented mathematical processes, but a raw skill should be able to crunch the data of all creation to solve any problem. He points out that 1 + 1 is just how we say it. The formula is just a human skin over a universal truth, and the skill sees far deeper than that. Our boy explains that a formula is just the surface of calculation, not the essence. In his eyes, the act of comparing data to extract new info only becomes a formula when it's translated into math. The true soul of the skill is simply obtaining the solution. He clenches his fist, declaring that calculator's real power lies in processing the source of reality itself, bypassing superficial human labels entirely. Arisa is completely underwater with this explanation, and demands to know what it actually means for her. The old man simplifies it. It makes her incredibly smart. As long as she has the data, she can find the answer to anything. Essentially, her skill is a cheat code for always being right, which leaves the poor girl looking more flustered than ever. Despite the grand speech, the kid remains skeptical. She points at herself, questioning why she hasn't suddenly turned into a genius if the skill is so broken. She doesn't feel any different than she did yesterday. The rest of the group watches her struggle, trying to reconcile his lofty claims with her own unremarkable experience. Our boy offers a hypothesis. She just hasn't mastered the thing yet. He isn't doubting her, but he notes that skills only sharpen through use. Since she hasn't touched calculator much, it's currently a paperweight. It starts to click for her. The skill isn't a passive buff, but a muscle she needs to train from the ground up. He confirms he dug up this intel while scouring the Royal Palace library. Shariva is impressed that he already grasped the concept of skill growth potential. The man explains that while basic skills like luminescence have fixed costs and outputs, the idea that a discarded skill could evolve into something top tier was the cornerstone of his entire plan. The old man reflects on his own stash of growth-type skills, even if they haven't shown much movement yet. He figures that since calculator was a cheat gift from the goddess, its ceiling must be astronomical. He finally reveals the long game. He had the girl working the shop to force her into doing thousands of simple sales calculations. Shariva leans in, eager to hear if this training actually paid off. Our boy notes that the girl is already faster and more accurate at math than he is. Tasks that used to take her a while are now instant. She can tally a pile of random magic stones in a heartbeat. When the mage asks what he intends to do with this sharpened weapon, he admits he hasn't fully decided. In his mind, having the ultimate calculator means he can basically do anything. If she can always find the correct answer, then any technology he can imagine becomes a reality. There's no need for trial and error when you can just manifest superior tech one after another. He admits it's an optimistic outlook, but it's mathematically sound. The blonde mage realizes their entire future now hinges on how far this girl's skill can grow. The man notices that the girls are totally lost, but his main target was Shariva anyway. The mage winks and agrees to the deal, realizing he's essentially asking for a massive loan. She promises to give the shop her official court mage seal of approval, which lets her funnel national research funding directly into his pocket. He lets out a breath of relief. The funding is secured. The mage assures him she wouldn't dream of refusing his request, especially with a magic stone factory promising such massive profits. There was never a reason to say no. With the business concluded, she looks up at him with a heavy blush and a shy expression. It's finally time for him to pay up on their private arrangement. She leans in close, reminding him that it's time for that promise, and she's ready to claim her reward. Our boy's face turns a violent shade of red as the realization hits, and he lets out a surprised shout. Arisa and Markarine just stand there with huge question marks over their heads, having no clue what kind of shady deal these two made in private. He asks if she's talking about the promise from when he left the palace, finally stealing his resolve. The mage confesses she's done being half-hearted and came fully prepared today. Deciding this isn't exactly all ages business, he suggests they take it elsewhere, leaving a frustrated Arisa screaming for an explanation as they walk away. The man is sweating bullets, desperate to keep the nature of this reward from his niece. He's terrified that if she finds out he's chasing a boy's backside, their relationship is finished. He notices Markarine is wisely staying out of it, leaving him to figure out how to lie his way through this without ruining his reputation forever. When the girl demands answers, he puts on his most serious face to try and sell a lie. He tells her he made a formal contract with the mage and there's a reward that simply can't be handed over in public. He frames it as a solemn business obligation, and while she looks suspicious, his gravitas almost manages to convince her. He tells Arisa he's going to a proper location to deliver the goods and promises to be back by dinner. Shariva jokingly mentions she wouldn't mind an audience, which sends the old man into a panic. He drags her away immediately, and the mage notes that he always gets weirdly pushy and aggressive whenever this specific topic comes up. The man is practically vibrating with intensity, his long-cherished wish finally within reach. He tells himself that losing his virginity is practically his main objective in this life, so he's not going to apologize for the hype. He pulls the mage along, telling the stunner to move it, while she blushes and tries to keep up with his sudden aggression. The deed is finally done. Our boy is on cloud 9, having finally fulfilled his ultimate wish. He reflects on how incredible the mage's body was, and as the two of them lie there in the aftermath, they both look completely satisfied and blissfully happy with the exchange. After the tryst, the man returns to the shop to handle the official paperwork. He is dead set on keeping the truth from his niece, certain she'd despise him if the secret got out. Meanwhile, the mage limps away with Margarine, complaining that her backside is killing her. They agree to finalize the royal documents later once the official papers are ready. Back at the store, our boy is humming a happy tune while dusting. Arisa watches him from a chair with a piercing look before dropping a bomb. Why was a guy like him working as a convenience store clerk in the old world? He stops mid-hum, wondering why on earth she'd bring that up now of all times. The girl blushes, reminding him that back then, he was her big brother Yuichi. He tries to say he's still the same guy, but she explains she always viewed him as a super genius who knew everything. Because of that, she could never wrap her head around why someone so brilliant ended up stuck in a dead-end retail job. She looks at him and admits that today, for the first time in a long time, he finally felt like the big brother Yuichi she looked up to. The man is stunned by the rare compliment. He stands frozen with his cleaning cloth, processing the weight of her words as a rare reflective silence fills the shop. Realizing she must be embarrassed to praise an old fossil like him, he decides to give her a straight answer. He explains that after being held back a year in college and eventually dropping out, his resume was trash. For a dropout, jobs in kitchens or security are all equally miserable, so the convenience store was just the first place that didn't throw his application in the bin. He breaks down the harsh reality. If you have zero social standing and poor communication, interviews are a graveyard. Competition is brutal even for the scraps, with energetic students and reliable retirees snapping up the decent spots. The only things left are low wage, high-stress roles where the turnover is so bad they'll hire anyone with a pulse. The old man admits he spent his college years reading books just to feed his own ego, and this was the bill coming due. When she asks why he didn't become a librarian, he points out that even that requires a certification he never bothered to get. Then she hits him with the real question: why did he fail and drop out instead of just finishing his degree? Otoki Yuichi admits his college career was a total checkmate. 6 years in, he barely had any credits, and with an 8-year limit, graduating was mathematically impossible. Dropping out was the only move left, especially since he'd lost his spark. When Arisa asks why he didn't just study, he explains his 2 guiding principles back then: satisfying an endless thirst for knowledge and becoming popular with girls. The admission that he just wanted to be a ladies' man leaves the girl staring at him with pure, liquid disgust. She lets out a low, nauseated ugh, clearly finding the idea of her uncle as a wannabe heartbreaker too much to handle. Our boy just stands there looking sheepish, while the silence gets real awkward. He starts the story of his life from the beginning. Even as a kid, he was a massive outlier, way smarter than everyone in his bracket. Unfortunately, that brain came with a nasty side effect. He looked down on everyone. While other kids were shouting about poop and playing tag, he'd watch from the sidelines, pitying them for being so simple-minded. He swore he'd never be that pathetic. By his teens, his worldview was completely warped. He couldn't fathom why guys dumber than him were drowning in female attention. He developed an arrogant theory: the women flocking to those idiots must be idiots themselves, only capable of bottom-tier connections. He pinned all his hopes on college, certain it would be a paradise of intellectual women who would finally appreciate a superior man like him. Reality had a different plan. He dated a few girls in college, but he was always the one getting dumped. Through that repeated failure, he eventually realized that being a genius doesn't make you lovable. He ended up totally isolated, never finding the intimacy he craved. He tells the girl now that, looking back, nobody is going to pick a partner who thinks they're a moron. The only reason he got dates at all was because nobody in college knew his reputation yet. But as soon as they tasted his personality, they sprinted for the exit. With nothing left but his books, he stopped caring about graduation and only took classes that interested him. He skipped the boring requirements to read in the library, still convinced his superiority would win out. Instead, it won him a clerk's uniform. After 6 years, he had a resume stained with a failure to launch and a dropout status. He couldn't even get past the front door for corporate interviews, and his elitist attitude ensured the ones he did get were disasters. Without connections or social skills, he fell into the life of a NEET. Years of that degenerate lifestyle finally beat the reality of his own worth into him. The old man finishes his sob story, but the girl doesn't judge him. She tells him she still remembers how cool he was back then. To her, he was just the amazing guy who had all the answers, She doesn't care about credits or dropouts. The only thing that matters is the man she's seen with her own eyes. She blushes hard and tells him that in her eyes, he's still that same cool guy. Our boy is blindsided by the kindness, and his eyes start welling up as he stammers a thanks. Embarrassed by her own sincerity, Arisa immediately pivots back to her usual sharp tongue. She tells him not to get a big head because even if he's okay, he's still just a dusty old man. He finds comfort in her insults, knowing it's just her way of hiding a blush. He feels a surge of pride for his niece, seeing her as a far better person than he ever was. She pulls the topic back to his past, asking if he really just settled for being a clerk. She wonders if a guy as capable as him could have found a normal career if he'd just pushed a little harder. He admits he probably could have landed a corporate gig if he'd chased certifications, but he'd already given up on his own potential, and his ego wouldn't let him suck up to a boss. However, the biggest reason he stayed a clerk was simple. He was actually happy. The girl is floored, unable to believe someone could find joy in such a low-tier position. The man explains that despite the garbage pay, he found real fulfillment in the job. He liked being useful to his coworkers, which was enough to keep him from wanting more. He hints there was one more embarrassing reason he won't tell her, noting that as people age, they start doing some pretty contradictory and wasteful things. He points out that some people rot in terrible jobs under bad bosses while still clinging to the delusion that they're special. To him, experience is a double-edged sword, both a treasure and a poison. These memories get carved into the soul and can't be rubbed out, steering a person's life in ways they can't even explain. Our boy confesses that even though he knows looking down on people is wrong, that arrogance is baked into his DNA. He can't delete it. He can only hide it. He believes that no matter how much logic you use, the heart can still drag you down a path of self-sabotage. He sees himself as one of those wasteful, pathetic creatures that people eventually turn into. He describes his life as a mess of contradictions, complaining about his lot while doing zero work to change it. He wants to be a hero for someone, yet he lacks the resolve to sacrifice everything for it. By marinating in his own failures, he feels like he's stepped into a swamp that's slowly swallowing him whole. Arisa asks if he's really okay with just giving up. He tells her it's out of his hands. He can't rewrite his personality at this age. He's been bracing himself for this reality for a long time. He intends to write it out as the despicable, hated guy he's become, following that lonely road all the way to the end. Accepting his status as a loser is the only way he survives without losing his mind. But that acceptance is exactly why he wants to be a shield for others. He wants the next generation to have a shot at something better than the wreckage he calls a life. He doesn't want anyone else ending up like him. Which is why, in his heart of hearts, he still wants to be a hero. He turns to Arisa and tells her he feels that way about her. Most of all, he begs her not to walk the same broken path he did. He just wants her to be happy. The girl looks at him, the weight of the moment sinking in, and promises she'll do her best in her own way. Relief washes over him. She really is a good kid. He feels like he doesn't deserve a niece this wonderful and was worried she'd just find his preaching annoying. He calls an end to the deep talk, suggesting they grab some dinner before it gets too dark to walk home safely. The girl agrees and heads out for a bite, clutching the silver coin he gave her. He watches her leave, noting that her goodbye sounded just a little softer than usual. It's a tiny shift, but it's enough to put a genuine smile on his face. The scene jumps to the royal palace, where the summoned heroes are stuffing their faces. Kanehama Keiichi, the hero, asks if anyone has heard the rumors about the insane magic shop downtown. Tudo Yuta, the swordmaster, is out of the loop. Keiichi explains they're selling a tattered old robe that somehow has god-tier defense, capable of stopping blades from anyone with average stats. Yuta is impressed by the tech. Keiichi adds that while a common knight can't leave a scratch, a royal knight captain could still cut through it. The goddess chimes in with a lecture. Knights here are elites with stats high enough to cleave metal. Mimori Saori, the saintess, is just glad the adventurers have better protection so fewer people end up in her infirmary. Yuta wonders who could possibly craft such gear. Matsuriya Yuki, the sage, suspects it's the work of a court mage or maybe another person with a cheat skill like theirs. Sayori is hooked and wants to visit the shop herself. Meanwhile, back at the store, our boy lets out a thunderous sneeze. Arisa immediately calls him gross and accuses him of spraying the merch, forcing a frantic apology. The spotlight turns to Shuriva, the stunner who looks like a beautiful girl but is actually a 100-year-old grandpa. Despite the youthful shell, this kid is a magical titan whose knowledge is in another league. As the head court mage, the prodigy is in a fantastic mood, humming as he prepares for the upcoming workload. Shuriva is the MVP of the Rungard Kingdom, treated like royalty wherever he goes. His background is a total mystery, but his wisdom and talent are legendary. As the head mage, he has the authority to use the entire department for his own research. Normally that's an abuse of power, but the other mages are actually honored to work under such a master just to get a scrap of his expert feedback. Shuriva is posted up in her private lab at the Royal Palace, a perk that gives her two distinct research facilities. One is her personal sanctuary, while the other is a communal hall for collaborating with other court mages. She can't help but wonder what Otoki Yuichi is actually plotting by herding all those mages into one spot. The prospect of a factory pumping out luminescence magic stones, fueled by his enchantment magic, and Arisa's calculator skill, is enough to make any court mage's heart race. The sheer scale of the situation has her reeling. Shariva finds it borderline delusional that he thinks he can stop a global conflict single-handedly. From where she's standing, it looks like the man is preparing to wage war against the nation itself. She realizes that as long as she stays quiet, she can keep things smooth with Margarine, who still thinks the kid is just a helpful citizen. She starts to wonder if our boy is counting on her to do exactly that. Even if she tried to shut him down now, there isn't much of a payoff for her. Shariva isn't exactly thrilled about being played, but she decides to roll with it and let him run wild. Honestly, she's just dying to see what he pulls off next. It's been decades since she's felt this kind of fire in her gut. Shariva storms into the joint laboratory and demands everyone's undivided attention. She flatly declares that from this moment on, they're doing things her way. The elderly mages stare at her like she's finally snapped, but she just tells them to wipe those looks off their faces. She leans over the table, urging them to just listen for a second. She promises that this time, the payoff isn't just for her. There's actually something in it for them too. Off on the sidelines, a certain goddess is having a miserable time. She's drowning her sorrows with a drink, wondering how her plan went so south. She can't wrap her head around how that old man is still breathing, after she crammed his soul full of absolute junk skills. By all rights, he should have been a vegetable or had his soul shatter into a million pieces instantly. Instead, he's not just alive. He's mastering those skills and living the ultimate cheat life. The goddess realizes she needs to get a grip and assess the damage, because he was overloaded with skills humans were never meant to carry. His status screen just glitched out with an error message. It's a literal miracle he survived being kicked out of the palace for being weak. Usually someone in his shoes would have been tossed out penniless to rot at the bottom of society, but this old man is built different. He bought himself some time before the banishment, and camped out in the library to learn the bare essentials for survival. The goddess is legitimately terrified of him, especially now that he's managed to squeeze magic lessons out of a court mage. After getting the boot, he took up adventuring, a job that doesn't care about your past. He started flashing skills no normal person should possess, even using his own scent to keep monsters away, which the goddess finds both repulsive and shocking. Now she's just bitter because he's saved enough coin to open his own shop and has a cute girl catering to his every need. He used his enchantment magic to forge items out of those junk skills, and the business took off like a rocket. Those light magic stones sold like crazy, bringing in a massive haul. Eventually, rumors of the shop's success reached the court mage, leading to their reunion and a promise to build a future together. The goddess thinks the whole thing is a total scam. She never imagined those trash skills could be weaponized like this and calls him a complete cheat. To her, he's become a monster-wielding power that rivals a hero's title. Whenever he hits a snag, he just pops a skill and solves it. Even if his combat stats aren't hero tier, he's a bigger cheat than the actual hero in every other category. She tells herself to stop hiding from reality and admits she screwed up by underestimating his survival. However, looking at it from another angle, this might actually be a win. She remembers that she had a very specific reason for entertaining the human's request for a summoning in the first place. That goal hasn't been hit yet, and while she still got hopes for the heroes, she decides to place some bets on Yuichi as well. He's a total wildcard, but since his personality leans toward the good side, she figures things won't get too messy. Having another cheat-level player in the world who can stand toe-to-toe with a hero is actually pretty convenient. She starts laughing to herself, thinking that things are finally starting to get entertaining. Back at the shop, our boy realizes that having the court mage's official stamp of approval gives his business some serious staying power. He expects things to get hectic, and since Arisa can't hold down the counter while he's off on other errands, he puts out a help wanted sign. He immediately gets a hit from a woman named Maria, who shows up with 2 kids in tow. Maria introduces herself and explains she lost her husband, an A-rank adventurer, 4 years back. Even though she's got plenty of gold, the isolation at home was eating at her and she wanted a reason to get out and work. She even brought the little ones along for the interview. Our boy points out that having all 3 of them there at once is going to be a challenge. Maria doesn't mind, so long as he's okay with looking after the kids while she handles her shifts. She isn't trying to treat the shop like a daycare, but they need a place to stay. He realizes he has some spare rooms on the 2nd floor that could serve as a temporary spot for them. He asks if there's a specific reason she won't let the kids out of her sight. Maria finally spills the truth. Her children are half-elves. Looking at Tiana and Tio, he notices their incredibly delicate, stunning features. He worries they'd be prime targets for kidnappers or worse, which explains why their mother is so hyper-protective. He decides to hire the whole family on the spot, even promising to loan the kids some magic items for self-defense. He figures that staying on Maria's good side is a smart move, since her late husband probably had a massive web of connections. She thanks him from the bottom of her heart, saying kindness like this is never wasted. She feels she can finally trust her children to the protection of such a capable and kind gentleman. Maria claims her years as an adventurer's wife gave her a perfect eye for powerful men. She looks him in the eye and tells him a man like him could easily fill the void she's felt since her husband passed. She's already looking forward to their time together, hoping he can bond with the children as if he were their own father. The shopkeeper is internally screaming because he is not ready for the weight of fatherhood, while his business is still on shaky ground. He feels like there's a total feast laid out in front of him that he's not allowed to touch. Maria asks the twins what they think, and they both cheer that they love him and want him to be their new papa. He really wishes they'd drop the papa stuff because it's way too much pressure. He knows he's made a killer first impression, but he has to draw the line somewhere. Still, thanks to his time with Shariva, his tastes have broadened, and he admits he's actually into the idea of being a dad to an androgynous boy like Tio. He tries to keep it professional, telling them they should focus on being a solid team of employees first. Maria isn't slowing down, grabbing his hands and telling him she's hoping for a relationship that goes way beyond just being an employee. He's completely blindsided by the aggressive flirting. It's both flattering and terrifying to be on the receiving end of this much heat. He thought hiring staff would give him a breather, but his free time hasn't increased at all. Even after training the new crew, he's stuck babysitting as part of the deal. While Maria is on the clock, he's constantly swarmed by the twins, who never miss a chance to hint that they want him as their father. The mental pressure is through the roof. He's starting to feel like this whole family is a pack of predators. Our boy spent a lot of time playing with the orphanage kids early on just to build some rapport. It worked. All the kids recognize him now and are comfortable enough to let their guard down. He watches them play tag while he focuses on the next phase of his master plan. With the shop's staffing issues handled, he's using his spare time to visit the orphanage regularly. He's even got Isabella acting as a teacher using the mountain of books he donated. The kids trust her completely, making the lessons stick. While funding this specialized education, he's already eyeing 2 of the orphans for recruitment. One is a sewing prodigy named Rosa, and the other is Joan, the oldest of the bunch and the kids' natural leader. He has Isabella set up a meeting to talk shop. He's got specific roles in mind and things he needs them to learn. Since Isabella might be wary of him cornering the kids alone, she joins the meeting too. He's confident she trusts him enough to hear him out. He kicks things off by telling Rosa and Joan that the reason he called them in is simple. He wants to offer them jobs at his shop. Joan is taken aback, questioning if they're too young to be working. Rosa is much more open to it, saying she's down for anything if it's a request from him. He quickly clarifies that he isn't asking for adult-level labor. He sees it more as helping out and gaining some real-world study. Addressing Rosa first, he confirms her talent for sewing. He tells her he wants her to sharpen that skill and promises to gift her books on tailoring and fashion. With that new knowledge, he wants her to master making all kinds of cloth garments. When she agrees, he adds that he'll personally buy every single piece she makes to sell in his shop. Rosa blushes, asking what she should do about the robe she's currently working on. He tells her to let the other kids handle the robes since she isn't the only one on that task. She's worried it'll make things harder for the others since they aren't great at sewing yet. So he suggests she just teach them the ropes. They can work at their own pace with no quotas to worry about. Rosa beams with a bright smile, promising to follow his lead exactly. A quick look at the sidelines reveals that the goddess is a total late riser. The sun is already high, and half the world has finished their morning shifts by the time she even starts to move. She groans about why a deity has to work at all, thinking she should be living the high life on a mountain of donations. She wonders where the faith went while she struggles to drag herself out of bed. 2 hours later, she's reflecting on the Rungard Kingdom's request for a hero to take down the Demon Lord. She starts daydreaming about the ideal fantasy party, the elite warrior, the comforting priest, and the mage with nuking power. And of course the hero, a cheat-level monster with divine protection. She gets hyped up thinking this is exactly what the world is missing. She explains her workflow. Good skills go into one pile. Junk skills go into a mountain of trash. She's made some bangers, but preparing skills for 30 people in an entire high school class was a massive headache. For every hero tier skill she crafts, she ends up with 2 or 3 useless ones. She really piled up the garbage skills this time around. She decides she has to get everyone summoned before the day ends, figuring tomorrow's problems can wait. When asked why she's so behind, she snaps that hitting the deadline is all that matters. Summoning isn't even that hard. She just has to scan for outsiders and hit a button. The button is actually an ancient artifact passed down between gods. She doesn't know how it works, but pumping it with magic lets her snatch targets from other worlds with 0 effort. She runs a safety check with her goddess vision before slamming the button. She's checking off names until she hits Kenzaki Tetsuya. She notes his crew includes Koichi, Junya, and Arisa. Looking at the girl's profile, she notes her height and tsundere vibes, thinking to herself that they look like the quintessential group of 4 delinquents. She bundles them all together and hits the button. When a victim complains, she just tells them not to sweat the details. They just got unlucky. A flashback shows our boy getting snagged in the accidental summoning while working his shift at the convenience store. Her total lack of empathy shows her true colors as a deity. He's left asking why she pushed the button when an outsider like him was clearly standing right there. She decides to just dump all her discarded junk skills onto him and ship him off, since she already hit her quota. She shoves him into another dimension, telling the strange old man to have a blast in the new world. Later, she admits she thought he'd die immediately, but he ended up growing at a terrifying rate. She checks his status scroll, which shows he's hit level 210 with a rank stats despite the skill error. She's blown away that the old man she dragged in as a bonus is actually stronger than the hero. She figures it just goes to show you should always keep what you find. She turns to the audience, telling them what happens next is the best part, and encourages them to keep supporting the story. She promises things are only getting more unhinged from here. Back in the present, he tells Joan he wants him to handle product deliveries. Joan is confused, so the shopkeeper explains that they're expanding the lineup, which means sourcing goods from all over. Since it's a lot of legwork to hit every store for inventory, he wants the kid to take over that part of the hustle. Joan realizes he's basically being asked to be a delivery boy and wonders if there's a catch. Joan is ready to jump in, but Isabella puts on the brakes. She asks if this isn't dangerous, worrying about a child running errands alone. She flatly refuses to let a kid wander the city carrying money, no matter the time of day. He tells her it's fine, because Joan won't be carrying any cash. He's just collecting items that have already been paid for. Isabella is floored by the reveal. Isabella still insists it's too risky for a child to be out solo. He agrees, which is why he's equipping Joan with defensive magic tools. He shows off a robe, explaining that while it's the design they made for him, the shop sells them enchanted. He tells her it's tougher than standard armor, and proves it by showing that a sword thrust won't even leave a scratch. Isabella is stunned, noting the performance rivals items found deep in high-level dungeons. Next up is a snack-based magic tool called Security Candy. Isabella is baffled by the idea of magical sweets. He explains it's just normal candy if you lick it, but biting down lets out a massive noise. He gives it a crunch, and the resulting screech makes Isabella jump. He explains that if Joan licks this on the job, he can stun an attacker and alert everyone nearby in an emergency. She starts to see the brilliance behind it. Finally, he reveals the protective magic stone. He's imbued it with a spell that wraps the body in a defensive barrier. In a pinch, you just squeeze it and pump in some magic to activate the shield. Isabella worries about the cost, but he reassures her that it recharges naturally in the sun. He tells her not to hold back on using it, especially since he made it himself, so it didn't cost him a dime. He lets Joan take the protective stone for a spin. The kid is ecstatic when it activates, yelling that it's his first time using magic. Our boy asks Isabella if she still thinks a kid is in danger when he's armed with this many magic tools. She admits she was wrong and agrees there shouldn't be any issues. Everything is moving exactly according to plan. With Joan handling the logistics, development of new tools is moving faster than ever. He's lined up the self-defense gear in the front window, and thanks to the hype, people are already swarming for the robes. Word is spreading through adventurers who tested the samples, just like he figured. Even with a steep price tag and low stock, they're flying off the shelves. The robes are doing their job, providing better protection than heavy armor. He knows there's dungeon tier armor that's better, but those are national treasures. Regular sellswords will never see. These robes are the mass-produced alternative every adventurer with gold wants. And rookies are already making it their top goal to save up for one. The customer base is massive now, and even the security candy is a hit with regular folks. Since he's supplying both the orphanage and Maria, it's become a favorite for local housewives. The protective stones are selling to both mercenaries and the public, while the price keeps the volume low. Wealthy families are buying them for their kids, and adventurers use them as a last resort insurance policy. He admits he only pulled off commercializing the stone thanks to Shariva's help. She points out a flaw in the magic circle and starts tweaking it. Enchanting barrier magic requires the kind of high-level brainpower only a few geniuses possess. Shariva took one look at his magic circle, fixed half of it, and rewrote the rest on the fly. Even though she did all the heavy lifting, he let them co-author it because of their connection. She reminds him that magic circles have copyright and stealing them is a crime before she ducks out. He realizes that if she really got serious, she could churn out these tools by the hundreds. Court mages are truly terrifying. The shelves are already filling up with new hits like Nectar Mochi. It's a sweet, long-lasting adventurer's ration that uses purification magic. He took a test item from his old days and turned it into a snack that tastes more like a treat than emergency food. The shop is also moving wooden boxes and leather bags enchanted with purification and temperature control. These things keep food fresh and hot, which is a godsend for anyone on the road. The storage items are a massive hit with the local housewives because they solve every kitchen problem. Word spread fast, and now the regular crowd is snatching up the wooden boxes alongside the adventurers. He's keeping the prices low, believing daily essentials shouldn't break the bank. Arisa watches the chaos and bets that these products will be the next big trend. Without any competition, they might even outsell the magic stones. Business is absolutely booming. The new menu items are a massive hit, and the shop is packed with customers who came specifically for the food. Otoki Yuichi starts eyeing a new expansion. Beverages. He considers adding juices, alcohol, and even coffee to the lineup. Watching the adventurer Gaius knock back a drink, our boy realizes that variety is the key to keeping these people happy. He makes the call to install a refrigerator and a warmer, breaking the news to Mikimoto Arisa. She's on board though. The sudden shift in logistics clearly catches her off guard. Since Arisa already understands the basic concept of refrigeration, our boy enlists her help. He apologizes for crashing her day off, but she admits she'd rather be doing this than the math homework he assigned her. He reveals a cooling plate and instructs her to mount it to the wall. This isn't just a hunk of metal. He had it custom made through Shariva's high-level connections. It's imbued with a weak ice attribute that chills the air when mana flows through it. Our boy isn't playing around. This single component cost him 2/3 of the shop's total profits so far. When Arisa asks how she's supposed to stick the plate to the wall, our boy produces a container of his adhesive fluid. He explains that it creates a bond like iron once it sets, but the girl immediately realizes the liquid is just his saliva. She completely loses her mind, threatening to murder him on the spot. He tries to calm her down by pointing out he brought a brush so she doesn't have to touch his spit, but she screams that the lack of physical contact isn't the issue. He just has to hope she doesn't actually follow through on the death threats. It takes some serious talking, but the girl finally agrees to use the adhesive, grumbling about sexual harassment the entire time. While she handles the interior installation, our boy climbs onto the roof to set up the power supply. He wipes the sweat from his brow and reveals his next breakthrough, a magical solar battery. The goddess steps in for a quick lecture on otherworld renewable energy. She explains that the light storage skill remains active even when a magic stone is crushed into powder. Since efficiency is all about surface area rather than volume, the powder form is actually superior. By coating a magic-conducting steel plate with his adhesive and dusting it with this powder, our boy has effectively manufactured a functional solar panel. The goddess breaks down the circuitry. Magic power flows from the solar panel on the roof directly to the cooling plate inside. Down below, the merchant finishes the job while the neighbors whisper about the weird cave dwarf doing strange things again. He's feeling the pressure, though. That steel plate ate up the remaining third of his earnings. If these cold drinks don't sell like crazy, he's going to be completely broke. After 4 days of grinding, the refrigerator is finally operational. Joan steps inside and is stunned by the chill, while Arisa finds it surreal that she's building modern appliances in a fantasy setting. Our boy is just praying his investment pays off. The girl questions the logic of spending their entire fortune just to sell cold drinks. But the shopkeeper stays optimistic. The gamble hits the jackpot instantly. Ice-cold alcohol is a massive sensation, and a crowd forms outside the shop before they can even settle in. Gaius is seen chugging a beverage with pure joy, shouting about how refreshing it is. Word of mouth travels fast, and the fridge becomes the most popular thing in the store. The 4 Japanese heroes walk into the shop and stop dead in their tracks. Tudo Yuta blabs that the place looks exactly like a convenience store, losing his mind over the fact that they're selling refrigerated booze. Kanehama Keiichi tries to shush him before he bothers the other customers, but the kid is too caught up in the nostalgia. Matsuriya Yuki and Mamori Saori try to pretend they don't know him, with Yuki calling the display embarrassing. Our boy immediately recognizes the group as students from his old high school. He clocks the loudmouth as Yuta the swordmaster, and the girl as Sayori the saintess. The others are Keiichi the hero and Yuki the sage. He's surprised to see the whole squad together so soon, but he realizes this is a golden opportunity he can't let pass. Deciding to focus on the reconnection first and the details later, the shopkeeper leans over the counter to welcome them. He introduces himself as the summoner who was fortunate enough to be kicked out of the palace. Yuta and Saori recognize him as the old man they saw previously, and Keiichi asks how he already knew their identities as heroes. Yuki admits he's actually jealous of the merchant's banishment, saying he'd take that deal in a heartbeat if it meant escaping the war. Keiichi warns him not to joke about that, insisting they were summoned for a noble cause to help people in need. Yuki just counters that he's already made his stance clear. He isn't drinking the kingdom's Kool-Aid. The merchant's assessment is confirmed. Keiichi is driven by genuine goodwill, but Yuki knows they're just being used as disposable tools. He decides the sage is the one he needs to build a real rapport with. He cuts through their gloomy debate by showcasing the shop's masterpiece, his enchanted robes. The shopkeeper flashes his most professional, polished smile to charm the group, his 0-yen business smile. The heroes can only stare at him, wondering what a banished summoner in a strange little shop could possibly have that they'd actually need. He explains that these robes are far more durable than any standard armor because they're imbued with shape memory and impact absorption. He specifically pitches them to the backliners, Yuki and Saori, who need protection without sacrificing their mobility. Saori looks genuinely intrigued by the sales pitch. The frontliners point out they already have kingdom-issued plate, and the others mention their current robes have magic buffs. Our boy suggests wearing his enchanted gear as an outer layer. He argues that if their magic buffing robes get shredded, they're offensive power tanks, so they need his sturdy fabric as a shield. Yuki admits the logic is airtight, while Saori confesses she was only hesitant because she didn't think the design was cute enough. The merchant is thrilled to secure a connection through a sale. Saori decides to pick up 2 robes, and he offers a polite thank you. Yuta asks if there's anything else worth seeing, though he's skeptical. A small shop can compete with national treasures. Our boy just smiles and suggests they might find something to their liking as he pulls out a glowing jar. Opening the jar, the shopkeeper introduces his improved take on portable adventurer rations. He explains the flavor is similar to Kinako sticks from back home and offers a sample to the saintess. She takes a bite and is instantly floored by the joy of it, crying out that it tastes exactly like the nostalgic Japanese snack. The other heroes dig into the mochi and are hit by a massive wave of nostalgia. Yuta is thrilled to find a taste of Japan in this world, and Keiichi notes that having food that is both functional and delicious is a major upgrade. Saori promises to return specifically for the snacks, though our boy notes to himself that she was the only one who actually spent any money. While Saori becomes a snack regular, Yuki starts dropping by just to talk. He's relieved to find someone who shares his deep distrust of the royal palace. He vents to our boy about his desire to stay out of the war while his classmates are so eager to jump into the fire. The merchant decides the iron is hot and asks the boy for a favor, which immediately puts the sage on alert. Our boy wants the dirty details. How are the students being treated? Do they have complaints? And what are their plans? He admits he has contacts at the palace, but he needs the perspective of someone calm and analytical. He wants the unfiltered truth about the state of the royal inner circle. Yuki agrees to play ball, stating that war is the last thing he wants, and he'll take any exit strategy he can get. The merchant is impressed by the kid's boldness and considers him a solid ally. Once the sage leaves, Arisa pulls her uncle aside and asks if it's really okay to be helping a hero plan his desertion. The girl points out that Yuki is one of their heavy hitters, and helping him dodge the draft seems like a recipe for disaster if they want to win the war. Our boy calmly tells her that he has zero intention of winning the war at all. She's stunned, reminding him that he explicitly told the court mage he'd secure a victory to end the fighting. The merchant tells his niece she's got it all wrong. He explains that his previous conversation about winning was purely hypothetical. He was just listing what could be done if he chose to help. He makes it crystal clear that he never actually promised to lead the kingdom to glory. Our boy says he'll apologize if he caused a misunderstanding, but he doesn't look particularly bothered. Yuki laughs in the background, realizing the merchant has been playing the kingdom officials from the very start. He tells Arisa that her uncle basically ran circles around the royals to get exactly what he wanted. The sage realizes the merchant chose his words so perfectly that the officials deceive themselves without him ever telling a single lie. By framing his answers that way, he made himself look like a loyal asset. Arisa is distressed, asking if this is really the right way to do things. She doesn't see how peace is possible if they aren't trying to win. The old man just looks at her and explains that being an adult means using pretense and expediency to control the outcome. Our boy keeps the lesson going, noting that for a man in his position, manipulation and using others for convenience is just standard procedure. The girl processes this and asks point blank if that means he's tricking Shariva as well. Without a hint of hesitation or guilt, the man confirms that she's hit the nail on the head. The merchant warns her to watch out for bad adults, though he suspects Shariva might be letting himself be fooled because it serves his own purposes. He explains that sometimes people pretend to be idiots when it suits their needs. Arisa clenches her fist, demanding to know if all his talk about ending the war and keeping everyone safe was just another layer of the lie. He assures her that his desire for peace is the real deal, mostly because his own safety depends on it. He adds that he'd like to help the other students from his old school too, but his kindness has a limit. He has no intention of saving the ones who are rotten to the core. He specifically calls out Tatsuya's group of delinquents, stating that he might just leave them to rot if the situation calls for it. Arisa is completely overwhelmed by this cynical worldview and shouts in frustration, admitting she doesn't understand him at all. She's nearly in tears, unable to reconcile the kind man she knows with the cold-blooded strategist standing in front of her. Our boy realizes that if they aren't on the same page regarding his methods, it's going to sabotage everything he's planning. The merchant decides it's time for a full debrief. He knows the night is long and they have a new partner in Yuki, so he wants to make sure they both understand exactly how he operates. The quiet night in the capital serves as the perfect setting for a masterclass in strategy. Our boy starts by dropping a bombshell. He doesn't actually have a meticulous, long-term plan. The girl is shocked, asking if he's really just flying blind. He clarifies that while there's no single set path, he has rough ideas for a dozen different scenarios. He isn't following a script. He's reacting to the board as the pieces move. Arisa pushes for a straight answer. Is he with the country or against it? He describes his stance as being flexible or just winging it. She loses her temper, screaming that his lack of a firm position makes no sense. The merchant just tells her that if she actually uses her head, she'll understand why a simple answer is impossible right now. The man reiterates his top priorities, their safety and the protection of the kids. He asks them to think about what actually achieves those goals. Arisa suggests that safety is simple, either find a place where there are no enemies or just move somewhere peaceful. She also notes that if they want to protect their classmates, they'll need to become incredibly powerful. Our boy agrees that her logic is sound and that overwhelming strength is the ultimate insurance policy. He identifies the three major threats in this world: war, monsters, and crime. Monsters and criminals can be dealt with via simple violence, but war is a much more complex beast that you can't just punch your way out of. There are only two ways to handle the danger of a war: run away to somewhere the fire hasn't reached, or put the fire out entirely. The merchant explains that running requires knowing where to go and how long they can stay hidden, especially since conflict tends to spread. Yuki chimes in, noting that crossing borders isn't exactly easy when a nation is in crisis mode. The shopkeeper points out that even if they manage to run, they'd need massive savings to live in comfort. He concludes that escaping isn't a viable strategy unless they find a perfect sanctuary. As for ending the war, one win or loss won't do it. Everything hinges on the political climate and the whims of the demon lord, making any rigid plan at this stage just pure guesswork. Arisa asks if they're basically screwed since they can't pick a direction. The merchant just smiles. They aren't checkmated, they're just waiting. He explains that as they gather more intel and the situation shifts, the right path will reveal itself. The goal right now is to stack their hand with as many cards as possible so they can play whatever path opens up. The girl asks if this means he's planning to climb the social ladder of the kingdom. Our boy says it's much simpler than that. He He explains that if they become the strongest force on the board, they'll have the freedom to do whatever they want, regardless of the law. The girl thinks becoming the strongest is a pipe dream, but the man clarifies he's talking about being prepared for every possible outcome. He reveals he's already playing both sides of the fence. He's reaching out to the Demon Lord's camp while simultaneously pulling strings for a kingdom victory, all while prepping a secret exit across the border if they need to vanish. Arisa is skeptical that he can really pull off a double agent act like that. The merchant maintains that he just needs to keep leveling up using every scrap of knowledge he has. He explains that this is the real mission behind the shop. He needs to be the one holding the capital and the personnel. Strength, in his eyes, is more than just a high level. It's social and economic dominance. He wants to be able to win a brawl, an information war, and a financial collapse all at once. His endgame is obtaining the power to win any kind of battle imaginable, to guarantee their absolute safety. Yuki is fully on board, admitting this cold, calculated approach is exactly why he chose to follow this man. Arisa, however, remains the realist. She points out there's no guarantee any of this works and asks what the backup plan is if he fails. The merchant admits that failing would be a massive headache. Our boy adds that even a failure wouldn't be the end of the world. He notes that this world isn't like Japan. While it's dangerous, it offers unique advantages to people in their specific position that they'd never have back home. He explains that since they were summoned with broken cheat skills, clawing their way back from rock bottom is much easier here, because they have that safety net. There's no reason to play it safe or fear a setback. He thinks they should swing for the fences while they can. The girl starts to see the logic, even if his chosen path is a lot more chaotic than a standard heroic journey. The merchant tells his niece that if she can't stomach his methods, he won't force her to stay. He says it would be a shame to lose her, but he'd respect her choice if she wanted to go her own way. He gives her the ultimate freedom to walk away or commit. The girl thinks back to how our boy was the only one who stepped up when she was in trouble. She realizes that even now, with all his cold talk of strategy, he's trying to secure her future by giving her a place at the shop. He's being considerate enough to offer her an out so she never feels like a prisoner to his plans. The man tells her he's not worried because things have a way of working out. The girl blushes and gives him a soft smile, admitting that his underlying kindness is the real reason she's sticking by him. She doesn't need to wrap her head around the complex geopolitics as long as she's on his team. For her, that's all the security she needs. The shopkeeper thanks her and gives her a reassuring pat on the head. Yuki is completely sold, praising the man for his incredible ability to stay calm and analyze the situation without bias. He finds it brilliant that our boy maintains a position of constant observation rather than rushing into a potentially fatal misjudgment. Arisa rolls her eyes and calls Yuki an absolute idiot for laying the praise on so thick. Our boy jokes that if they keep inflating his ego like this, it's going to go to his head. He notes that they're finally all on the same page and asks if there are any lingering questions before they get to work on the next phase. Matsuria Yuki and Mikimoto Arisa wrap up their initial talk with the veteran adventurer. The hero-to-be, Yuki, is fully on board, claiming he has zero issues supporting the older man's philosophy. Even the bratty niece, Arisa, crosses her arms and caves, deciding she'll stop overthinking things and put her trust in the old man for the time being. Sensing the mood has shifted, Otoki Yuichi gestures for them to settle in so they can hammer out their next move. Otoki turns to the young hero, asking for the lowdown on the other summoned heroes and the inner workings of the royal palace. He needs this intel to decide how to navigate the political waters. Yuki is more than happy to oblige, noting that having someone with an outside perspective look at his situation is actually a massive help. The kid is eager to spill everything he knows if it means having a reliable ally. Our boy reflects on how vital it is to have a partner in a different social tier, as relying on a single point of view is a one-way ticket to making a fatal mistake. He then shifts his focus to Arisa, reminding the girl that her calculator skill is a sleeping giant with insane potential. To jumpstart her growth, he tasks her with solving math problems and drops the bombshell that he's taking her into real combat to teach her the adventurer ropes. The old man argues that his years of experience will keep their experiments safe and controlled. He's got a hunch that the calculator skill can do way more than just basic math. He thinks it can actually analyze data during live dungeon crawls. Though she's clearly out of her depth, Arisa agrees to the plan since it helps her uncle, touched by her cooperation. Otoki offers a deep, formal bow of gratitude. As the new trio chats over the counter, Yuki shares the gritty details of life inside the royal palace. It's exactly what the veteran feared. The palace is grooming these high school kids to be tools of war while feeding them a steady diet of public praise. The students are still blind to the manipulation, while the adults caught in the crossfire of the summoning are currently being held under house arrest. The thought of these kids being led to their deaths by their own sense of justice hits Otoki hard, making him more determined than ever to intervene. His somber reflection is cut short when Arisa leans on the counter with a suspicious look. She blunt force asks the hero why he spent the last hour sucking up to a middle-aged guy like her uncle so shamelessly. The hero adjusts his glasses with total composure, explaining that he simply respects those who earn it, before calling the girl out for her delinquent attitude. Arisa fires back that her uncle's creepy looks should make him the last person on earth anyone respects. The jab stings, and Otoki laments how his rough appearance always gets him judged before people see his skills. At the very least, he's glad the kid in front of him sees past the face. Yuki suddenly gets passionate, declaring that Otoki is great specifically because he looks like a worn-out, plain old man while hiding god-tier abilities. Arisa is just confused by the logic, arguing that a washed-up guy is just, well, lame. The hero doubles down, claiming that hopeless old guys are actually cute in their own way, but the niece isn't buying it. To her, her uncle is just plain hopeless. Sighing at her lack of culture, Yuki decides to give her a crash course in the genre of osan moe. He explains that it's a deep, sophisticated field where the target of affection doesn't have to be a pretty boy. He tells her the world is a big place, and some people actually adore old guys who are greasy, fat, or just plain tired. He's teaching her that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The delinquent girl looks at him with pure skepticism and asks if he's basically just into her uncle. The hero doesn't flinch, declaring that he likes the man's personality, brains, and looks, stating it's only natural to fall for someone who fits his personal tastes so perfectly. Arisa tries to warn him that using the phrase personal tastes between two dudes carries a very specific, very weird connotation. With a heavy blush, Yuki drops the mask and admits he's gay, using that phrase with 100% intent. He explains his feelings for the older man are a 50-50 split between professional respect and genuine romance. The revelation leaves Otoki in a state of pure shock, wondering if he's being viewed as a sexual object, while Arisa is literally turned to stone by the confession. The young hero quickly reassures our guy that he isn't going to force himself on him. Otoki tries to keep his cool, reminding himself that Japanese common sense doesn't apply in this bizarre new world. He maintains his professional distance, offering a polite apology while making it crystal clear that he can't return those romantic feelings. He's strictly into women. Yuki asks if the rejection is just because they're both guys, but the veteran clarifies that he's strictly straight. The hero finds this hard to believe, mentioning he heard a spicy rumor from Shariva, the court mage, that the old man has already had experience with other men. Otoki realizes this conversation is heading into very dangerous territory. Pressed for the truth, Otoki admits he was intimate with Shariva, but he defends himself by pointing out that the mage looks exactly like a girl. He argues that his primal instincts were just fooled by the mage's feminine appearance. Desperate for a chance, Yuki asks if he could win him over too, but our boy shuts that down with an immediate, soul-crushing no. The old man concludes that since he doesn't get turned on by men, he's definitely not gay. Yuki seems to take the L, but Arisa suddenly snaps and grabs her uncle by the collar. She screams at him, demanding to know if he's serious. When he stands by his logic, she bellows that she isn't talking about his orientation. She's talking about the literal act he performed with another man. Fuming in bright red, the niece demands the dirty details of the encounter with the mage. Otoki doesn't sugarcoat it, admitting they definitely had sex. Arisa is horrified, pushing for the final confirmation of whether he actually stuck it in the other guy's ass. Our boy just gives her a calm, matter-of-fact, yes. He isn't even trying to hide it. Arisa is repulsed, labeling her uncle a perverted, vulgar old creep. He doesn't even argue, simply stating he did what he did with a guy who looked like a bombshell. She then brings up how he's always trying to make her touch his spit, but the veteran defends his honor, insisting that his adhesive fluid is a legitimate skill and not some gross fetish. Otoki bows and thanks the girl for her colorful feedback, which only triggers another screaming match. The hero asks one last time if there's any hope, but the veteran confirms he only has eyes for feminine charm. The kid finally realizes that winning the old man's heart is going to be an uphill battle of legendary proportions. Yuki decides to retreat for now, though. He notes that the future isn't written in stone yet. Our guy agrees that anything can happen, which absolutely enrages Arisa. She's furious that he isn't giving the kid a hard, permanent rejection. The old man just shrugs it off, refusing to make promises he can't keep about the distant future. Determined to play the long game, Yuki shakes the veteran's hand and prepares to head back to the palace. He promises to return often with fresh reports and intelligence, vowing that one day he'll acquire a new charm that will make the older man's head turn. Instead of being creeped out, Otoki simply says he looks forward to seeing what the kid comes up with. The hero finally makes his exit after causing a total scene. Arisa watches him go with a suspicious glare, wondering aloud what kind of effort he's planning, even questioning if the kid is going to start cross-dressing to get her uncle's attention. Our boy just breaks into a cold sweat, praying that things don't get that complicated. With the hero gone, the veteran chews on the intel he received. The palace is rushing their child soldiers to the front lines because the Demon Lord's army is ramping up their attacks. Realizing the clock is ticking, our boy decides he needs to accelerate his own plans if he wants to stay ahead of the kingdom's desperate power plays. The goal is to develop a new line of products using discarded skills and magic. The tech side is easy for a guy like him, but he's short on the high-end resources his small-time shop can't get. He makes a bold announcement. It's time to head into a dungeon and harvest exactly what he needs from the source. Arisa wonders why he doesn't just go solo, but the old man explains that dungeons are experienced gold mines. He wants to bring along companions who need the levels, planning to do all the heavy lifting while funneling the EXP to them. The niece sighs, clearly thinking that any form of training is a massive pain in the neck. Maria, the shop assistant, recognizes the tactic as classic power leveling and is impressed by his expertise. She offers to let her twins, Tio and Tiana, tag along for the ride. She even points him toward a specific low-difficulty dungeon that's loaded with the resources he's looking for. Our guy agrees and starts making safety preparations for the field trip. Over dinner, Maria expresses her massive gratitude, though she checks one last time if he's sure about taking 2 kids into a dungeon. Otoki gives a firm nod, promising to take full responsibility for their safety. The twins are practically glowing with excitement, having dreamed of being adventurers for ages. Finally, he turns to Arisa and tells her that her participation is mandatory. The girl clutches her tea in a panic, stuttering before finally accepting her fate. The niece looks like she's carrying the weight of the world while staring into her tea. The veteran explains the cold logic. He needs to see how her calculator skill grows in a real fight. He's going to power level her while drilling the basics of survival into her head. He gives her a heavy look, telling her that learning to protect herself now is the only way she'll survive what's coming next. The orphan boy, Joan, suddenly explodes with energy and begs to join the expedition. After a moment of thought, our guy gives the green light. He realizes that having a high-level Joan would be perfect for his future plans of making the kid a field commander. Joan then asks if they can bring Rosa along too, since she's been wanting to hang out with the old man. Without hesitation, Otoki welcomes her to the team. The plan is set. As long as Isabella gives the okay, Rosa is in. A few days later, the party is fully prepped and standing at the ready. The lineup is Otoki, Arisa, Maria, the twins, Joan, and Rosa. The niece is already annoyed by the size of the crowd, clicking her tongue in frustration, while Maria tries to keep everyone's spirits up. The kids, however, are absolutely buzzing for their first adventure. The squad arrives at a stone dungeon entrance carved into a hillside. This spot is perfect for training since the traps are already cleared and the monsters only hit C rank at most. While Rosa is hyped, Tiana admits she's a little spooked. Joan tries to play the hero, telling her they're safe with the old man around. Arisa steps up to herd the kids, telling her uncle to focus on the killing while she keeps the group together. The veteran tells everyone to stay back and let him handle the heavy lifting, prompting cheers from the kids and a weary look from his niece. Before stepping inside, he demands to see everyone's status cards to track their growth. Arisa hands hers over, revealing she's level 8 with a rank magic, but embarrassing E ranks in every physical category. She avoids eye contact as he reviews her mediocre stats. Checking the rest of the cards, Otoki notes the twins have decent baseline stats while Rosa is lagging behind. Surprisingly, every single kid in the group has a unique skill or attribute, signaling some serious latent talent. Just as they're about to move, a stunning woman with a lantern appears to give the audience a breakdown on how dungeons actually function in this world. The lantern bearer explains that dungeons are essentially living monsters that give birth to other monsters within magical pocket dimensions. This specific dungeon is a factory for stone golems. As the massive rocky creatures begin pulling themselves out of the earth to block the party's path, the woman wonders how the old man plans to carry this group of rookies through such a heavy encounter. The group starts to panic as the golems loom over them. Arisa and the twins check in with the veteran, worried he's in over his head. With total chill, our boy puts his hands in his pockets and tells them these rocks are nothing compared to him. He walks straight into the shadow of the 2 stone giants, telling his students to just sit back and enjoy the show. Just as Otoki steps between the 2 monsters, a blinding flash of light erupts from his center. A thunderous explosion rocks the entire cavern, and the kids are frozen in pure horror. They watch the fireball consume the spot where the old man was standing, with Joan and Rosa screaming in terror as they assume their mentor just blew himself to kingdom come. The smoke clears to reveal a massive crater where the monsters used to be. Standing dead center is the veteran, completely unscathed and casually wiping sweat from his forehead. He tells them everything is fine, but Arisa isn't having it. She sprints toward him, screaming at the top of her lungs about how fine is the last word anyone should use after a blast like that. Arisa demands to know if he just pulled a suicide bomb routine. The old man calmly explains he used a skill called self-destruction, which mixes vitality and mana to nuke everything in the vicinity. He claims that if you tweak it just right, you can deal massive damage while taking almost nothing yourself. The niece is baffled, telling him she knew he was weird, but blowing himself up is next-level insanity. Our guy explains that since his stats are so high, the self-damage is basically a joke. He can pop off like that all day long. As long as the user has the stats to tank it, it's the most efficient AoE attack in the game. Plus, he can just heal the minor scratches with magic. Joan and Rosa are in absolute awe, convinced that top-tier adventurers are just built different. The niece watches him walk away, wondering what kind of monster stats he must have to walk off a point-blank explosion without a scratch. The twins are just glad he's alive, while Joan is starting to think the old man is the coolest person ever. To settle the debate, Otoki decides to just show them his status sheet and end the mystery once and for all. The status card is revealed, and it's absolute insanity. Level 215 with a rank stats across the board in strength, magic, vitality, and speed. His attributes are listed as none, and his skill section is just a glitched out error message. Our boy strikes a proud pose while Arisa and Joan stare at the card, unable to process the fact that he's reached level 200. The kids are floored, noting that even the legendary S-rank adventurers usually cap out around level 100. Otoki is more than double that. Joan admits he's never even heard of a level that high. Arisa is impressed but points out that a rank stats seem a bit low for someone of his level. She asks the million-dollar question, how did he even pull this off? The answer, an automatic leveling skill. Arisa knows something fishy is going on and demands the specifics. The kids lean in, desperate for the secret to infinite power. Seeing no reason to hide it, since no normal human could survive his method anyway, the veteran decides to pull back the curtain and tell them the truth about his grueling journey. Our guy explains that in his early days he combined the disease and insomnia skills to farm EXP. He'd spend his days doing adventurer work while his own body constantly ate itself for experience. By level 40 he was wheezing through 10-day all-nighters. The gains eventually slowed down once he hit level 100. But that's when he unlocked the real game changer. The veteran reveals his disease skill evolved into Plague. This nasty upgrade generates EXP based on the damage dealt and the level of the target it afflicts. By infecting himself, he created a perfect loop. As he levels up, the EXP he gains from his own self-inflicted plague increases. It's an infinite, self-sustaining cycle of suffering and growth. Otoki mentions he's aiming for level 1 or 2000 eventually. He explains his stats are only a rank because he has to manually suppress the plague skill so it doesn't kill him in his sleep. The group looks at him with pure, unadulterated disgust. Arisa is the first to speak, telling him she knew he was a workaholic, but she never imagined he was a literal self-harming freak. Joan joins in, calling the old man's methods straight-up perverted. Our boy is genuinely shocked that even the kid is judging him. He realizes that while his logic was flawless, his approach was missing a bit of basic human decency. He actually bows and thanks them for the wake-up call, leaving Arisa and the kids wondering why he's being so polite about being called a weirdo. Once the awkwardness of his leveling secret settles, the group continues their trek. Otoki leads the way, magic stone in hand, until they run into another wall of golems. Joan is ready to jump into the fray, but the old man just casually strolls toward the monsters again, hands tucked into his pockets like he's taking a walk in the park. Another massive self-destruction blast rings out, instantly vaporizing the golems and clearing the path. Arisa and the children have to shield their eyes from the blinding flash and the following shockwave. Joan can't help but be impressed by the raw, terrifying power, even if the method behind it is completely unhinged. Joan is hyped up by the display, while Arisa is already bored of the routine. The veteran explains that he's specifically targeting golems to fast-track the group's levels. His goal is to get all 5 of them up to the stats of a seasoned rookie adventurer before they leave. He tells them to pull out their status cards and check the gains, and the kids eagerly comply. The results are exactly what our boy expected. Arisa is growing fast because of her hero blood, while Joan's vitality is skyrocketing thanks to his unique skill. Confident they can handle themselves now, he decides to let them explore solo. He notes that this area is the perfect training ground since golems are slow, predictable, and don't use dirty tricks. Otoki Yuichi decides to follow standard procedure for rookie adventurers and appoints Joan as the party leader. Joan is caught off guard by the sudden promotion, but Otoki explains that his role will be to guide the adventure and issue instructions to everyone else. Feeling the responsibility, the boy promises to give it his best shot. Otoki continues organizing the group, telling Arisa to stay with him in the rearguard to protect the others. He turns to Rosa, noting that she likely hasn't learned magic yet, and instructs Tio and Tiana to provide support from the back. He asks the 2 magic users to teach Rosa the ropes, and they readily agree, while Rosa nervously promises to do her best. With everyone's roles finally set, the group of 5 officially begins their adventure with Otoki serving as their guardian. Joan leads the way with a confident grin, followed closely by the rest of the party as they head deeper into the dungeon. The group soon encounters a rare sight, a mithril plate golem. Otoki recognizes it from his studies, noting that while this area is usually home to low-level rock golems, this particular monster is a valuable bonus. He remembers that only its outer layer is truly hard, while the inside remains as fragile as a normal golem, making it a great source of experience and rare mithril. Otoki decides it is time for some real combat and tells Joan to take the lead. The boy doesn't hesitate, charging forward with his wooden club and landing a heavy strike on the golem's shoulder. He feels a surge of confidence as he makes the first move. The confidence is short-lived, as Otoki realizes the golem's durability is in a league of its own, and Joan's strike barely left a scratch. As the monster prepares a massive counterattack, Joan panics, but Otoki rushes in just in time to scoop the boy up and dodge the crushing blow. Otoki checks to make sure Joan is all right, and the boy is clearly moved by the rescue. Setting him down, Otoki tells him not to worry because he has him covered. He instructs the boy to calm down and watch closely, explaining that a golem's attacks are actually easy to dodge if you pay attention. Taking the advice to heart, Joan charges back in and successfully ducks under the golem's heavy swings. He focuses on the monster's movements, dodging the slow but powerful punches with ease as they whistle harmlessly past him. The golem eventually overextends and falls to the ground, giving Joan the perfect opening. He shouts that it is payback time and begins relentlessly bashing the fallen construct with his club. Under the force of the repeated strikes, the golem's outer shell finally begins to crumble and break apart. After the battle, Otoki praises Joan for a job well done, and the boy happily credits his success to Otoki's protection. This display of affection makes the other girls jealous, with Tiana and Rosa complaining that they want head pats too. Realizing he shouldn't play favorites, Otoki waves the rest of the group over to give them their share of praise. Otoki tells Tio, Tiana, and Rosa that they were splendid as well. He explains that rookies often get carried away and hit their own allies with magic, but they properly assessed the situation and held their fire. As the girls giggle happily, Otoki reflects on how humans are simple creatures who need rewards to stay motivated, though he admits he wasn't really thinking that far ahead when he started the head pats. The children are energized and continue through the dungeon with high spirits. Otoki thinks about how children quickly grow bored of tedious tasks like dungeon exploring, so providing positive reinforcement is essential for maintaining efficiency. Arisa leads the way, warning the kids not to push themselves too hard. Otoki kneels to absorb the remains of the golem, prompting Arisa to ask if he is using a skill. He confirms it just as the goddess appears to deliver another lecture. She introduces the ability Otoki just used as Iron Blood. The goddess explains that Iron Blood allows the user to dissolve metallic substances into their bloodstream, offering far more storage than a standard item bag. However, it only works for metals and requires an open wound for both collection and retrieval. She notes the skill originated from a hedgehog-like monster before dismissing the class, ignoring Otoki's confusion about the laws of physics. As they move on, the group finds an abundance of ore deposits but no monsters. Otoki finds this extremely unnatural since ore deposits are a byproduct of golem generation. The goddess adds that these deposits are like summoning circles and are usually a reward for slaying golems, making their presence without any enemies very suspicious. Otoki considers the possibilities, thinking that either the monsters have swarmed elsewhere or there is a single, incredibly powerful monster nearby. He realizes that either scenario is dangerous for the children and decides he needs to remain on high alert. Arisa notices his serious expression and calls out to him. A massive steel golem suddenly appears, surrounded by a horde of smaller ones. Otoki takes the lead, telling the children to stay back where it is safe while Arisa covers the rear. He tells the magic users they can practice their support attacks on the slow-moving golems as long as they don't hit him. Arisa stops Otoki, pointing out that something is weird about the giant golem. She explains that unlike the others, this thing is made of solid iron inside and out. She notes that its movement patterns are different from anything they have seen so far, which surprises Otoki. Otoki realizes that Arisa is using her calculator skill to analyze the enemy. While he can't see the difference himself, he understands that her skill allows her to analyze tiny physical variations and run simulations that an ordinary person couldn't do. He concludes that her ability to obtain accurate information is what makes her calculations so precise. Otoki is certain that Arisa's skill is at work and encourages her to speak up if she notices anything else. She enthusiastically agrees, and Otoki prepares to approach the horde. He briefly considers using a self-destruction skill, but decides against it to avoid endangering the children. The children launch their magical assault, calling out shots of rock, air, and ice. Otoki watches the spells hit the golems, noting that while their durability is high, the repeated attacks will eventually bring them down. In the meantime, he decides to handle the giant golem himself. Otoki blocks a heavy blow from the giant golem, feeling the incredible toughness of the solid iron impact. He realizes that defeating it with an explosion would require too much power, and would likely catch the children in the blast radius. Otoki decides on a different approach and uses a small knife to cut his own palm. As the blood begins to flow, he looks at the massive construct and calmly declares that it is time to eat. Lunging forward, Otoki presses his bleeding palm against the golem's chest. The massive iron monster begins to dissolve into particles as it is absorbed directly into his body. After the meal is finished, he steps back and claps his hands together in a short prayer of thanks. The goddess returns for a follow-up lecture on the Iron Blood skill. She explains that while it can break down any metal, it can be resisted by living things like monsters. To overcome this resistance, the user's level must be at least twice that of the opponent, which explains how Otoki was able to absorb the golem so easily. The goddess watches Otoki Yuichi from her realm, noting that he is essentially a fairly strong monster himself. For him to easily absorb a steel giant golem means his power level is off the charts. She reflects on his obsessive nature, calling him a grinding pervert who spends every hour of every day leveling up. He even pioneered an infinite leveling system using his disease skill, which spreads pathogens to torment humans with illness. By targeting himself and letting time pass, he gains constant experience points despite the pain. The goddess decides she has to keep a close eye on him, wondering just how much stronger this man will get as she scribbles notes in her otherworld lecture book. Back in the dungeon, Otoki watches as everyone gives the golems a real beatdown. He notices that the group has finally gotten used to the rhythm of combat, but Arisa stands out the most. He analyzes her calculator skill, realizing its high computational power is good for much more than just math. She moves with terrifying precision, dodging heavy strikes as if she can see the future. By using deep logical analysis, she systematically dismantles the stone constructs with ease. Arisa takes command of the front line, shouting for magic support in a specific direction. Joan responds instantly, calling out his rock shoot spell to blast the target. Otoki notes that Arisa is intentionally picking out enemies that are easy to knock down and herding them into positions where magic attacks will be most effective. It is impressive to see someone with zero prior combat experience fighting at this level. He is certain this tactical brilliance is the direct result of her unique skill. Otoki reflects on how Calculator allows Arisa to analyze any information and derive the correct answer, making it a nearly ideal ability. He starts thinking that many of his long-term plans might actually be possible now. His thoughts are interrupted when Arisa calls him over, addressing him as old man. She tells him she noticed something strange about the dungeon. According to her calculations, the number of ore deposits they have discovered doesn't match the low number of golems they have run into so far. Otoki knows that ore density usually reflects the number and strength of the monsters in an area. He realizes it is highly likely that deeper inside, the golems are multiplying and evolving at an unnatural rate. Arisa suggests that the Demon Lord's army might be behind this. Since this is supposed to be a safe resource dungeon for humans, Otoki decides not to take any chances. He tells the group they are heading back immediately, leading the children and Arisa away from the potential danger. The group decides to set up camp since traveling through the night with children is too risky. Otoki is still troubled by the numbers, thinking about how encountering only one steel giant golem and 68 steel plate golems is far too few for this dungeon. He finds it disturbingly easy to imagine a conspiracy behind these unnatural circumstances. Despite his worries, he gets to work on dinner. Joan and Rosa are exhausted and starving, but Joan makes sure to thank Otoki, saying he wasn't scared at all because the old man was there. Otoki's mind drifts to the possibility of an agent from the Demon Lord's army gathering and managing monsters in the deeper, unseen parts of the dungeon. He worries they are excessively strengthening these creatures to unleash them all at once when the time is right. He watches the children eat, trying to keep his dark suspicions to himself so they can enjoy their meal in peace. The expedition has been a great success for power leveling, but Otoki resolves that he won't let anything happen to these precious children. He pulls out magic-powered cooking utensils from the bag Shariva gave him. It is essentially a portable hot plate that uses a magic stone instead of gas. He thinks about how much Shariva must like him to provide such high-end gear, while normal adventurers have to suffer through preserved foods. His group gets to enjoy a hot meal, which he considers true happiness. Otoki announces that the stew is ready and tells everyone to eat. The children dig in with a loud cheer. Joan says the hot soup makes all his exhaustion melt away and really warms him up. The twins tell him the soup is delicious, and Rosa adds that after everything that happened today, the meal tastes even better. Seeing the children this happy makes all the effort of cooking worthwhile for Otoki. Otoki recalls that when Rosa mentioned a lot happening, she wasn't just talking about the first golems. On their way back, they ran into over a dozen mithril golems, which caused everyone to tense up in fear. Joan was even crying for his mother. However, Otoki stepped forward and told the monsters they couldn't run away. Since his Ironblood skill allows him to absorb mithril, he neutralized the entire group in an instant. Rosa was thrilled, calling him their amazing old man, while Arisa just looked on in disbelief. After those numerous battles, everyone's level has skyrocketed except for Otoki's. All the children are now level 40, and Arisa has reached level 70. Joan wonders if he's getting stronger, and Otoki realizes their stats now surpass those of ordinary adventurers. However, he knows they are still amateurs when it comes to real experience. He decides to stay vigilant during the night, grateful for his insomnia skill which lets him stay awake indefinitely to guard the camp. Once the soup is finished, the children wrap themselves in their robes to sleep on the cold ground. Otoki knows it is uncomfortable, but being able to move at a moment's notice is a rule for adventurers. Joan starts whimpering, complaining that the rock is too hard and he can't sleep. Otoki tells him there is nothing they can do about it and to just find a better position. Joan then comes up with a different idea, asking the old man to sleep right next to him instead. Joan looks at Otoki and admits that if he's right there, he feels like he could sleep without any worries. Otoki is a bit surprised but agrees to the request. Joan is overjoyed, asking if they can really sleep together, and gives a happy cheer when Otoki confirms it. Joan snuggles close, telling Otoki that being near him is really calming. He explains that ever since Otoki saved him in the first battle today, he has felt safe and relaxed whenever the man is nearby. He doesn't really understand why, but it just makes him happy. Otoki thinks to himself that if his presence alone can calm the boy, he'll stay with him. Joan adds that he thinks he could even sleep on a hard room if Otoki were there. Rosa suddenly bursts in, shouting that it isn't fair for only Joan to get all the attention. She demands to sleep with Otoki too, and clings to his other side. She tells him he is really cute, which leaves Otoki completely confused. When he asks if she really means him, she confirms it, saying he's cute like a cave dwarf. She blushes and quietly confesses that she really likes him. The half-elf twins, Tio and Tiana, don't want to be left out either. They approach timidly, blushing as they ask if it's okay for them to sleep next to him as well. Otoki is internally screaming, completely overwhelmed as he finds himself surrounded by children who all want to cuddle. The twins lean in and start rubbing their faces against Otoki's cheeks. He sits there frozen, his face turning bright red as the children snuggle up to him from every angle. He is clearly out of his element and has no idea how to handle this much affection at once. Otoki asks the twins if they are having trouble sleeping too, but their answer leaves him speechless. They explain that their mommy said he might be a lolicon, so they should try to seduce him properly. Otoki is horrified, asking if they even know what that means, but they just say their mother told them to leave it up to him. He is deeply troubled, firmly deciding that he has no intention of laying a hand on children this young. He sees imaginary signs in his head and chooses the one that says no lolicon, as he reminds himself the others are watching. Otoki decides that ignoring them entirely would be too cruel. He pulls all the children into a large group hug, asking them how they like that. He tells them all good night as they settle in. Within moments, Joan, Rosa, and the twins are all fast asleep, huddled together in Otoki's arms for warmth and safety. Later that night, while the children are sound asleep, Otoki quietly wakes Arisa. He tells her there is something he needs to ask of her. Arisa is still half asleep until he tells her he needs her to look after the children. She immediately sits up, asking if he is going somewhere. Otoki confirms it, stating he is going to get rid of the enemy. Arisa asks if the situation is really that bad, and Otoki tells her that it is. He explains that he is going to leave the camp and act as a decoy to make contact with the enemy alone. By doing this, the enemy will likely assume he is the only intruder. He promises to defeat them if possible to ensure their safety. He tells Arisa that even if he can't win, she must lead the children out of the dungeon while they are far away from the fight. Arisa can only stare at him in shock. Otoki explains that they also need to report the dungeon's abnormalities to the guild, and splitting up allows them to accomplish both goals. Arisa, with tears beginning to fall, takes a deep breath and accepts the responsibility. She tells him she will take charge and protect the children. She looks at him with a determined smile, telling the old man to go on without any worries. With that, Otoki prepares to head into the depths alone as Volume 3 comes to a close. In a bonus segment, Shriva presents a math problem about a boy with 1 apple and a girl with none. The boy gets full from 1.5 apples, while the girl gets full from half an apple. She asks how many apples are left if they both eat until they are full. Otoki confidently answers that 1 apple is left, but Shriva immediately tells him he is incorrect, leaving him completely baffled. Shriva explains the true answer. The girl wants the boy to eat the rest of her share, and she wants him to hurry up, become a man, and make her happy. Arisa blushes and looks away, while Otoki is shocked by the logic. He can't believe that was the intended answer, while Shriva notes that such a response is exactly what you'd expect from a cheat skill. Otoki is impressed while Arisa just smiles to herself. In the final bonus segment, Otoki and Arisa parody a shopping channel called Dream Otherworld Net Otogi. Otoki puts on his best host persona, holding up a glowing crystal and announcing that today's featured item is the light magic stone. Arisa stands beside him with a professional smile, playing along with the presentation as they show off the product to their imaginary audience. Our boy reflects on his past life as a terminal bookworm, admitting he'd get so buried in a story that he'd forget to eat or sleep. In this new world, however, the lack of electricity makes late-night reading a massive pain. He tries to sell Arisa on the idea that she must be dying for a way to study after dark, but she isn't buying it. She flatly rejects the pitch, stating she has zero intention of studying in another world and values her sleep far more than knowledge. The scene shifts into a full-blown home shopping channel parody. Otoki steps into his role as a charismatic host to introduce today's hot item, the light magic stone. Beside him, Maria stands with a literal heart floating over her head, clearly far more captivated by the salesman than the product he's trying to pitch. The pitch continues as the old man laments the tragedy of a world without light bulbs, but Maria has a much thirstier application in mind. She leans in close, whispering that when night falls, a woman's form is better left concealed by the shadows. She tells him that lighting up a bedroom is a total lack of taste and begs him not to do it. Caught completely off guard by the bombshell's suggestive tone, he can only scream in confusion as the segment abruptly cuts to a standby screen. When the shopping set returns, our boy is looking a little worse for wear, covered from head to toe in lipstick kiss marks. Despite the obvious distraction he just endured, he pushes through the exhaustion to introduce the light magic stone once again. This time Shriva joins him on stage, looking genuinely eager to see what he's cooked up. The researcher relates to the struggle, admitting she's also prone to pulling all-nighters when she gets deep into her work. Our boy explains that his stone is user-friendly and packs 10 times the brightness of standard luminous moss. A quick charge in the sunlight provides enough juice to shine all night long, making it a dream for late-night scholars. The woman realizes she's looking at a top-tier magic tool and immediately worries that something this effective would cost a fortune. Our boy drops a bombshell by announcing the price is a measly 10 silver coins. The researcher is floored, noting that even garbage-tier tools usually go for a full gold coin. To keep the stock high for the masses, the old man admits he worked for a solid week without a wink of sleep. This honesty backfires when she finds his workaholic nature to be a massive turnoff. Undeterred, he finishes the ad, small stones for 10 coins, and 100-hour large versions for 20. He promises extra staff will be ready for the next 3 days to help everyone light up their lives. Back in the dungeon, our boy prepares to dive deeper alone to hunt down a hidden threat. He leaves the orphans in the care of Arisa, who is doing a poor job of hiding her tears. She demands that he better come back alive because they'll all be waiting for him. He promises to bail if things get hairy, but internally he's locked in. He can't afford to die here. He has a new family to protect. Our boy steps into a massive open cavern deep within the rocky hillside. He scans the area and decides it's the perfect killing floor for what's coming. The open layout ensures he'll spot any enemies coming from the depths, and more importantly, it gives him the space he needs to move without restriction once the real fight kicks off. Perched on a stone ledge, the old man waits patiently in the dark. He knows that if an enemy is coming, this is the only path it can take. Suddenly, a thick black liquid begins dripping from the ceiling, pooling ominously on the floor. A voice calls out, commending his boldness for waiting in such a place. From the darkness, a towering, featureless golem emerges to challenge him. Even facing a monster, our boy keeps his manners, introducing himself and asking for the creature's name. The golem is actually impressed by the courtesy and tells him to engrave his name upon his very soul. He reveals himself as Shubarik, the orichalcum golem, and one of the demon lord's elite 4 heavenly kings. Our boy reacts with such bored indifference that it visibly pisses the golem off. The monster demands to know why he isn't shaking in his boots at the sight of a heavenly king. He calmly explains that he'd already pegged this as a sabotage operation, given the scale of the accidents in a kingdom-run dungeon. He stares the beast down and asks if it's the one responsible for the recent mess. With a twisted smile, the golem confirms the theory. He's been siphoning the dungeon's energy to build a massive army of high-level golems. When a weary Otoki asks why go through all this trouble, the monster's answer is simple and dripping with malice. He's doing it for pure, unadulterated revenge against the human race. Shubarik's end goal is a dungeon overflow that will wipe the kingdom off the map. Our boy realizes the plan only worked because it stayed hidden. If the knights had caught on sooner, they would have crushed it. The golem is confident because he thinks the overflow is imminent. But our boy knows he's the only witness left. If he fails here, the disaster becomes inevitable. The old man knows he has to crush this scheme here and now, or the capital is toast. A fight is the only way out. The monster finds the human's resolve hilarious, asking if he honestly thinks he can stop a heavenly king while a legion of golem subordinates looms in the shadows behind him. The golem boasts that his body is forged from legendary orichalcum, mocking his opponent for being a weak human with no visible power. Our boy recalls Arisa's lore about the metal. It's the toughest material on Earth. Resistant to both heat and magic, he just smirks, deciding to put that legendary defense to the ultimate test with a single strike. Our boy unleashes a devastating high kick at the monster's side. The impact is earth-shattering, and to the golem's absolute horror, a massive chunk of his supposedly indestructible body shatters and goes flying into the dark. Shubarik stares at the gaping hole in his own torso in complete disbelief, unable to process how a mere human managed to crack his shell. Our boy just offers a casual smirk, looking completely relaxed after landing a blow that should have been physically impossible. The golem is furious, demanding to know what kind of trick the human used, since not even other orichalcum should be able to dent him. Our boy explains it's nothing fancy. He admits the defense was absolute, so he didn't even try to cut through the metal. Instead, he simply shaved it off. The old man breaks down his method, revealing he's using a trash tier ability called Restless Leg. Back in Japan, it was just a nervous habit, but in this world, the vibration speed scales with his insane stats. By layering that high-speed vibration onto mithril blades created with his iron blood skill, he birthed a new technique, the high-frequency blade kick. It's a combination that packs more destructive power than even he expected. He notes that while orichalcum is harder than mithril, it's not infinitely stronger. This gap allowed his vibrating blades to shave right through the legendary metal, even if it meant trashing his own mithril weapons in the process. He tells the golem flatly that his legendary durability is nothing more than a minor speed bump for these attacks. Shubarik grunts in frustration, but manages to keep his cool. He taunts our boy, explaining that since he controls the dungeon's energy, he has an infinite battery. As long as that power flows, he can spawn monsters at will, and since he's a monster himself, he can just regenerate his body as many times as it takes to win. The golem laughs, claiming the human never had a ghost of a chance. He dares our boy to keep attacking, confident that he'll just heal instantly every single time. He assumes the vibrating kick must drain a ton of stamina and bets that the human will collapse long before the golem runs out of juice. Our boy just looks bored, thinking to himself that since the skill is just Restless Leg, he could literally keep kicking until he starves to death. He tells the golem an endurance match might be fun, but reveals that his victory was already set in stone the moment he realized the opponent was made of orichalcum. The monster remains arrogant, welcoming whatever trump card the human thinks he's holding. Our boy notes that the golem's cockiness is perfect for his next move. He pulls out a small knife and with a calm apology, makes a shallow slice across his own palm. Our boy steps up and gently rests his bleeding hand against the monster's chest. Before it can react, he triggers his iron blood skill. A massive surge of energy erupts as he begins to directly absorb the golem's orichalcum body into himself. Shubarik screams in pure agony, unable to believe a human is using iron blood to dismantle his legendary form piece by piece. The old man notes that this skill is normally impossible for humans, which is why the golem was so careless. Shubarik is losing his mind, shrieking that such power should belong only to demonic beasts. Our boy just smiles and tells him he's looking at the exception to the rule. The golem screams that even so, absorbing his power should be impossible, unless the attacker is more than double his own level. Shubarik insists that being double his level is a feat reserved for the demon lord alone. Our boy isn't even breaking a sweat, asking out of pure curiosity what the golem's level actually is. The beast proudly bellows that he is level 98. He claims that forget humans, even the demon lord's elite generals rarely ever climb that high. Our boy casually drops the fact that his own level is actually a bit over 200, making this whole encounter a bit of a close call. The golem screams that it's a lie, arguing that the strongest human in history barely hit 100. He can't fathom how a random old man is this strong. Our boy explains the trick. He has a specific skill that essentially farms levels on its own. Looking at the smoking remains, our boy realizes the golem can't regenerate from just a head. Shubrick admits he lost and calls the human a cheater, since the absorption outpaced his healing. The old man reflects on how lucky he was that their skills had such perfect synergy. Accepting his end, the golem admits his defeat was inevitable from the moment an anomaly like our boy caught wind of the plan. He stops fighting and tells the human to just finish it. Our boy finishes the execution and takes a long, deep breath. He knows he got lucky. Without that skill synergy, his stats are only at the peak of human potential. Against the full weight of the Demon Lord's army, he's still not entirely confident. For now, he turns his focus to the remaining trash golems to ensure the orphans are safe. Arisa sprints through the cavern, desperate to find the old man. She finally spots his silhouette in the distance and shouts out with a face full of pure relief. The narrative shifts as the next phase begins, the experiment regarding Calculator. The girl rushes toward him, her panic finally subsiding. The girl throws herself at the old man, sobbing with relief that he's actually safe. He gently pats her head and apologizes for making her wait. Still crying, she tells him to shut up and calls him an idiot, saying that none of that matters as long as he's okay. He tells her the emergency is handled and he even wiped out the culprit. He tries to reassure her, but she just pushes him back and screams that he doesn't understand anything. She calls him a dumbass again, explaining that her fear wasn't just about safety. Eventually, she wipes her eyes and mutters that it's fine. The girl suggests they wake the children soon, and our boy agrees the sooner they get home, the better. Her mood finally starts to lift when they go to wake the group. Joan, Tiana, and the rest jump up and immediately tackle the old man in an excited pile. He's completely swamped by the burst of kid energy. The group makes it out of the dungeon without any further trouble. They drop the kids back at the orphanage where they belong, and Isabella is there to greet them with open arms. Once the little ones are settled, our boy and his niece head for the guild to file their official report. Our boy reports an abnormal golem outbreak but strategically leaves out any mention of the Heavenly King. He figures keeping that intel to himself is the smarter play for now. He does warn the guild that more anomalies could pop up, hoping the kingdom buffs security around the multi-dungeons. Looking back at the chaos, he decides that despite the danger, everything turned out for the best. The trip was a goldmine. The kids leveled up. He realized Arisa's calculator skill is a game changer, and he walked away with a secret stash of orichalcum. Plus, he's got a massive information lead over the crown. He watches his niece as she sleeps, thinking that while it was a gamble, the rewards were well worth the risk. The day after their return, our boy decides it's time for a special experiment with Arisa's skill. When she asks what he's up to, he explains it's just the logical next step of his research. He reminds her that his deep dive into enchantment magic is exactly how he developed all their successful tools. The old man explains that by enchanting items with his own skills, he can create top-tier magic tools at a fraction of the cost. That's how the shop became a money-printing machine. He then points out that enchantment can also transfer skills to people. When she asks where he's going with this, he asks her point blank, "Calculator is a skill too, isn't it?" The girl is stunned as the realization hits her. Our boy confirms the plan. He's going to use enchantment magic to try and copy her calculator skill for himself. He places a hand on her shoulder as she looks at him with a mix of shock and growing dread. The niece asks if he's actually sure about this. She points out that calculator is a cheat skill directly from the goddess and worries about the danger of messing with it. She suspects her own soul and body were rebuilt just to handle that kind of power. He admits there's a risk, especially with a skill that's so overwhelmingly potent. Our boy argues that the potential payoff is just too huge to ignore. She begs him not to do it, saying it sounds way too reckless. He insists that while the side effects are a maybe, the reward is a definitely. He claims as long as he doesn't drop dead instantly, it's worth the price. With watery eyes, she asks him if the chance of instant death is actually higher than 0. He tells her that by her logic, being an adventurer is dangerous and their dungeon trip was a death trap. He believes their future will be full of gambles just like this. He pats her head, telling her he sees no point in playing it safe just this once. The girl finally caves, realizing he's going to do it with or without her blessing. She tells him to just get it over with and kneels on the magic circle. Our boy gives the signal and prepares to initiate the transfer. The enchantment kicks off with a blinding flash, but things go sideways immediately. Our boy suffers a violent backlash and coughs up a massive spray of blood. Arisa is frozen in sheer horror as she watches him collapse under the crushing weight of the skill transfer. The old man finally wakes up in his own bed, realizing the backlash knocked him out for a significant amount of time. He sees his niece asleep in a chair right beside him, having stayed by his side the entire time. He thinks to himself that she really is a sweet kid at heart. Despite the brutal physical toll, the enchantment was a massive success. For one brief moment, he held a skill like calculator and tapped into an immeasurable well of knowledge. He couldn't verify everything in that split second, but the answers he snatched were more than enough. He discovered new skill combos and unlocked a massive wealth of magic circle theory. His perfect record skill preserved every bit of it, allowing Calculator to solve theoretical puzzles that were once impossible. This leap puts him ahead of every living expert, including Shariva. He realizes he can now craft an ultimate enchantment for overwhelming power, though there's one catch he hasn't mentioned yet. Arisa wakes up and is relieved he's conscious, but then she immediately starts screaming at him for the scare. She lays into him for collapsing while bleeding from his nose, eyes and ears, hitting him while she cries. Our boy gives a sincere apology and promises to be more careful in the future. The girl tells him she's just glad he's alive and mentions Maria made some dinner for him. She offers to go fetch it, and he thanks her. As she walks out humming a tune, our boy thinks that his niece really is a kind soul. Yuichi reflects on a forbidden technique his calculator skill derived to make him the world's strongest. There's a catch though, using it requires sacrificing Arisa. He realizes the enchantment puts her very life on the line, and that is a price he is simply not willing to pay. He decides to seal the technique away for good, believing that if he has to burn the person he wants to protect, the power is worthless. As the girl brings him a tray of food, he sits up and vows to bury that dark knowledge deep in his mind, praying it never resurfaces. Outside, the sun rises over the capital as a new day begins. Margarine and Shariva drop by the shop, with the night captain wondering what business he has with them today. He just smiles and presents a row of heavy metal bars on the counter. The two women freeze in absolute shock as they realize they are looking at a massive stash of pure orichalcum. The captain demands to know how he got his hands on such a rare treasure, but our boy keeps his secrets close. He just points out the proof is sitting right in front of them. Shariva picks up a bar to inspect it, confirming it is without a doubt genuine. As she wonders what the price for such a resource will be, he leans in, admitting there is something specific he needs in return. He proposes a formal trade for the legendary metal. Margarine is already running the numbers. Orichalcum armor would slash casualties and make hunting high-rank monsters a breeze. Meanwhile, the court mage wants every scrap she can get for her research. The captain asks for a specific amount, warning that if he only has a few bars, she cannot promise a massive reward. Our boy casually offers to prep about 10 tons for now, asking if that will suffice. Margarine practically screeches in disbelief at the number. Privately, he notes his iron blood skill actually swallowed several hundred tons during his last scrap, so this is just a small sample to get the ball rolling. Both women are left reeling from the sheer scale of the offer. He plans to play his cards based on their reactions, making sure he keeps plenty of the rare metal for his own projects. When Shariva asks for his price, he reveals he wants land, specifically the area just beyond the capital's slums right outside the outer wall. The two women just stare at him, repeating the request in total confusion. They cannot understand why he would ask for a plot in such a rundown place. Margarine points out that with this much orichalcum, he could buy a prime spot in the noble district. She warns him that life outside the walls is dangerous and a massive hassle. He admits she is right for a normal person, but explains that for his specific goal, the outskirts are actually much more convenient. He explains that he needs a massive plot to build a factory. If he tried setting up shop inside the walls, he would be buried in noise complaints, relocation fees, and endless public hearings. Plus, the river on the outskirts provides the industrial water access he needs. He lays it all out while the women listen with wide eyes. Flashing a professional smile, our boy asks if that clears things up. The captain admits she understands the logic and agrees that land outside the capital is a small price for what he is offering. She accepts the terms, sealing the partnership with a firm handshake over the counter. Shariva promises to grease the wheels with the higher-ups to make sure the request sails through. When he asks to ensure the riverfront is included, she confirms she was already on it. He bows his head, genuinely grateful for the mage's assistance. He notices Margarine watching him with a strange look and asks if something is wrong. She just giggles, admitting she is simply impressed by him. He and Shariva just trade a confused glance, unable to see what she finds so amusing. The captain reflects on their first meeting, remembering how she initially brushed him off as just a weird guy. She recalls the day he was pulled into their world and how she felt the knights were supposed to protect him. Back then, she knew he was not on the side of the heroes. She realizes that before she knew it, he had left the castle nest to stand on his own 2 feet. He evolved from a guy needing a bodyguard into a citizen supporting the very foundation of the Knight Order. To her, he has become a friend and an equal capable of negotiating a fair deal. Margarine tells him that watching him navigate such massive changes while making steady progress has made her realize how remarkable he is. He thanks her, but the mage teases him about his weird habit of being overly polite at the most random times. The captain says she is looking forward to their partnership. He shakes her hand again, thanking her for her continued support. The shop stays quiet as he considers his next move. The factory plans are moving, but he needs a solution for the magic item shop. Since the new project will eat all his time, he realizes he has to hand the management to someone else. His first thought is Arisa. She has been his right hand since the start, and her recent skill growth has turned her into a math whiz. He knows she would handle the inventory and sales figures without breaking a sweat. The other option is Maria. As an A-rank adventurer's widow, she has a massive network and knows exactly what the local wives are looking for. She is naturally sharp and already acts as a local leader, making her more than capable of running the show. He asks the girl to step up as manager, pointing out her work ethic and improved math skills. She hesitates, admitting she just doesn't have the confidence for the role. She can't even imagine being in charge, leaving him slumped in disappointment while she goes back to work. With the first rejection down, he turns to Maria. She also thinks it is a bad idea, explaining that her business decisions would be too biased toward the customers. She argues that such a one-sided perspective is poison for a manager. Our boy just groans, feeling the weight of another refusal. Maria believes there is someone much more suited for the job. He asks if she is sure, but she just offers an apology. As Arisa cleans in the background, he realizes he is going to have to get creative to solve this staffing crisis. Over at the Adventurer Guild, Shirley is yawning behind the reception desk, complaining about how boring things have been. Our boy walks up and greets her, startling her so badly, she shouts his name for the whole room to hear. The receptionist is thrilled to see him and asks what is on the menu today. He tells her he has come with a great offer, though he notes great depends on her perspective. She leans in with pure excitement, dying to hear what he has in mind. Yuichi decides it is time to bring in a pro and makes a direct proposal. He tells Shirley he is there to scout her, asking if she would like to jump ship and work at his store. The offer catches her completely off guard, and she lets out a startled squeak as her face turns a deep, embarrassed crimson. While the girl remains shaken, our boy goes over his logic. Arisa and Maria have the skills, but they lack the broad business sense needed for management. He figures, if he can bring in someone to bridge that gap, the whole machine will finally run. In his mind, she is the perfect candidate to handle the tough calls, even as the adventurer Gaius looks dejected in the background. He considers her background at the guild. She is already a pro at handling complex negotiations and juggling quests. She can hit the ground running because she is used to working in a team. His plan is to split the duties between Maria, Arisa, and Shirley, so the three of them can manage the store as a cohesive unit. He reflects on the fact that she is the receptionist he has known the longest. Understanding her character makes this serious offer much easier to pitch. He gives her a warm, encouraging smile and asks again if she will join him. She can only bury her face in her hands, completely overwhelmed by the request. Fidgeting nervously, Shirley admits the guild has been incredibly boring since he left. She confesses she has been thinking about that for a while now. He is surprised by the honesty, and she adds that if his shop offers that same kind of fulfillment, she would love to accept. She clutches her cheeks in embarrassment, but her answer is a definite yes. They agree to hammer out the details in a few days, and Shirley says she is looking forward to it. Later, he returns to the shop, relieved that the manager headache is finally cured. He looks out at the peaceful streets, satisfied with the progress. He doesn't realize until much later exactly why she was blushing so intensely. The new setup starts off strong, and he watches as Shirley begins her training. He puts Maria on the sales floor while the newcomer handles planning and project management. After a quick crash course, she is already suggesting floor improvements by the next day. He is stunned by her speed, realizing she is packing a specific skill for this. The girl reveals she has an information processing skill, which explains the insane efficiency. He realizes then that being a guild receptionist is a brutal grind involving massive herb deliveries and constant multitasking. She probably needed that skill just to survive the workload. He watches her work, impressed by how easily she wrangles the inventory. She finishes the count and starts planning the next restock based on sales trends. Our boy notes the teamwork is top tier, with Shirley and Maria providing different perspectives to the business. While one focuses on the buyers, the other looks at the bottom line. Even when they clash, Arisa uses her calculator skill to play mediator and keep things moving. The three-person system is meshing even better than he hoped, mostly because they all respect the value of each other's skills. He tells them that thanks to their hard work, he can finally turn his attention to the factory. He is pleased, but Arisa watches him with a serious, almost lonely look. Things seem fine, but something still feels a bit off. Arisa tells him he had better show his face at the shop often because it gets lonely without him. He tries to reassure her, saying this is the shop they started together and he wants to see her too. He promises he will always come back for her, which makes her snap that he is an idiot, and that is not what she meant. He just smiles, thinking she is just really attached to the business. Our boy thinks he just wants his niece to find happiness, completely missing the point. He talks to Shirley next, and she asks if he is ditching the shop for his new job. He assures her that once the factory is stable, he will be right back. He explains he still plans on making the store even bigger in the future. Shirley is relieved to hear it, and vows to protect the shop, so he always has a home to return to. She strikes a pose, telling him she will be waiting. He hums as he walks off to find Maria, while behind him, a blushing Shirley wonders if she finally got her true feelings across. Maria asks if he just said the same thing to Shirley. He doesn't see the issue and confirms it, earning himself a heavy sigh. She tells him she knew he lacked common sense, but this is getting pathetic. He starts sweating under her judgmental gaze, having no clue what he did wrong. He demands an explanation, so Maria lays it out. When a successful adventurer retires and poaches their personal receptionist, it usually implies they are keeping her as a mistress. The realization hits him like a truck. The words mistress and significant other echo in his skull as the weight of the misunderstanding sinks in. He finally sees the trap, but Maria twists the knife. By giving her a job and then leaving, he looks like an unfaithful man. She notes that Shirley definitely thinks he intends to marry her, which is why she was so relieved he is coming back. Our boy realizes his Japanese common sense is clashing violently with this world's lack of it. Maria warns him that if he doesn't clear the air soon, things will get ugly. His brilliant solution: pretend he didn't notice and kick the can down the road. He tells her he will feign innocence until he has a real plan, which earns him a scumbag label from Maria. He begs her to keep it a secret, admitting he has no idea how to handle accidental proposals. Maria agrees that stirring the pot now would just cause chaos, much to his relief. But then she gives him an ominous smile, suggesting he should just accept his fate. She points out that with his resources, it wouldn't be weird to just keep all three of them. He just stares into space, terrified of where she is taking this. He stammers, asking what she means by the three of them. She clarifies that the public thinks he is keeping Shirley, and since she and Arissa are in the same shop, everyone assumes they are all his mistresses. She even admits that until 5 minutes ago. That is exactly what she thought was happening too. He realizes he completely underestimated how people view former adventurers here. Maria notes that since Arissa has been with him the longest, people are convinced she is his future legal wife. He can only apologize for the mess, but she adds that his talk of leaving the shop sounded like a breakup letter, which had her pretty shaken up. Maria decides to view the situation as a positive, since she has already chosen to support him. She warns him that if he rejects them as mistresses now, society will treat them like damaged goods. She demands he take responsibility, leaving a sweating Yuichi begging to put the matter on hold. She just smiles and says she will wait for his favorable reply. Leaving that massive headache behind, he heads to the royal palace to finalize his land purchase. Margarine explained that a straight sale would look bad, so the kingdom is granting him the title of honorary noble as a reward. He will be a noble in name only for 1 generation, but the land will be his personal property, not tied to the title. The captain greets him to get the paperwork moving. She tells him the peerage ceremony is set for the afternoon, giving him some time to kill in the reception room. She assures him it is an easy process and he just needs to learn the steps. He takes it in, relieved that at least one part of his plan is actually going smoothly. With time on his hands, he considers snooping around to see if he can find the other heroes, but Margarine interrupts his thoughts with a new topic. She leans on her hand and mentions hearing a rumor that he has finally decided to settle down. He is instantly caught off guard by the sudden gossip. When he asks for her source, she explains it is the talk of the town. He is shocked she listens to street gossip, but she just smiles and drops the punchline. Apparently everyone is saying the cave dwarf is finally getting himself a wife. He is left speechless, realizing just how fast the misunderstanding has spiraled out of control. Knight Captain Margarine notes how the recent rumors have become the talk of the town, admitting the gossip reached her ears without her even trying to find it. Once she actually looked into the chatter, she was stunned to discover the man at the center of the scandal was none other than Yuichi. Our boy can only laugh nervously, admitting the news caught him off guard too. The captain mentions she considered them close friends, yet he never gave her a single hint about what was really going on. He's left stammering, unsure how to handle the heavy atmosphere. With a soft, knowing smile, she suggests that perhaps in his eyes, she was never anything more than just a friend. Deciding it's time for cards on the table, Margarine leans in close and confesses she's had her sights set on him for quite some time. The blunt admission leaves Yuichi completely stunned. She tells him to wipe that troubled look off his face, insisting this is just a simple confession and she isn't planning to force his hand immediately. Caught in the headlights, our boy can only manage a weak follow-up, asking exactly when these feelings of hers actually started. The captain reveals that her heart was stolen the very day they first met. Back then, he took the time to show genuine appreciation for her hard work, a kindness she had never experienced before. She explains that while she's received a lifetime of praise as the knight captain, no man had ever looked past her rank to acknowledge the actual labor she performs for her. Those sincere words made it love at first sight. From that moment on, she couldn't stop dreaming about having a home to return to, a place where she could shed her obligations and be greeted with simple kindness. The mere thought of it caused a sudden overwhelming wave of loneliness to crash over her. It was the first time she'd ever felt a genuine desire for marriage, and every time she pictured a face in those fantasies, it was always him. Margarine admits she was getting ahead of herself, thinking that if he became an honorary noble, they'd finally be one step closer to the altar. Yuichi is blushing like crazy, asking why his social status matters so much in the first place. She explains the cold reality of their world. Her position is equivalent to nobility, meaning a match wouldn't be seen as equal unless he held a title. She thought the problem was solved and the wind was in her sails, but now she fears she was just chasing a daydream. Clearly embarrassed by her emotional outburst, the blonde beauty tries to hide her face. Our boy steps in to calm the waters, telling her that things aren't exactly how she's imagining them. He clarifies that while the rumors are flying, the situation isn't about marriage, or at least, it hasn't reached that point yet. This tiny spark of hope makes her look up with glowing eyes, desperate to know what he could possibly mean by that. Yuichi clarifies that it isn't a lack of interest in marriage, but rather a matter of timing. He feels he's currently in no position to properly support a woman, especially with how fast circumstances can shift. He declares that until he has the wealth to provide for those close to him, and the power to keep them safe, he has no intention of settling down. The knight captain listens with sparkling eyes, nodding along as if she's just heard the most romantic vow in history. Margarine completely misses the point. assuming he's implying that once he gains enough status, he plans on taking even more wives than the 3 everyone already gossips about. She thinks he's gunning for a high rank just because it would be scandalous for a mere honorary noble to marry multiple high society women. Our boy is left speechless, watching her spin his logic of responsibility into a blueprint for a massive harem. The captain decides that if that's the hurdle, she'll simply wait for him to climb high enough to claim her. Yuichi realizes her wild misinterpretation has led her straight to the conclusion that a wedding is inevitable. He knows clearing this up will be a nightmare, so he decides to shove all the drama into a box for later. As long as he doesn't say anything definitive, he can make excuses down the line. It's a classic case of escaping reality, though he notes that since she's the only high-ranking woman he's close to, the mess is only going to get deeper. Yuichi tells her that if he ever finds someone who truly matters, he'll be the one to go to her. The captain takes this as a solemn promise of his future resolve and says she'll be looking forward to that day. She skips away in high spirits, humming a happy tune while our boy is left standing there looking absolutely drained by the whole encounter. Finally alone, Yuichi reflects on just how complicated his life is getting. First there was Shirley, and now he's let Margarine dive into a total misunderstanding too. While he appreciates being the object of affection for so many stunning women, he knows it's way too early to play house. His main focus is making his factory a titan of industry. He needs a system that prints money before he can even think about romance. Our boy figures that once his business is a powerhouse, marrying someone like Shirley or the captain wouldn't be such a bad deal. He decides to stop overthinking it and starts to walk away. But a rustle in the nearby bushes stops him cold. He pauses, noticing a figure huddling low in the greenery, and asks if there's a problem. A girl with incredibly long hair is crouched in the brush, clearly trying to stay out of sight. Yuichi stands over her, asking if she has something on her mind. The girl begins to tremble and stutter, looking like she's about to jump out of her skin now that she's been discovered. Looking closer, Yuichi realizes this face is familiar. This is Yashiro Nanakamoto. He remembers her clearly from the initial summoning because of her mysterious vibe and that distinctively long name. She's one of the heroes from his old world, and right now, she's fidgeting and clutching her cloak as if she's trying to shrink into the dirt. Yashiro finally finds her voice, looking up with raw emotion, and telling him he's finally come for her. She even calls him her beloved, which leaves our boy completely floored. He demands to know what she's talking about, and she explains she's been waiting forever, trusting that his kindness would eventually lead him to forgive her for her sin and seek her out. The girl tells him he can ask her anything. Yuichi admits he's totally lost and asks for an explanation, starting with the whole beloved title. She fidgets nervously, explaining that it means exactly what it sounds like. He's the person she loves, so that's simply what she calls him. Yuichi is floored to learn. She has feelings for him, but she seems hurt that he doesn't remember her. She decides it's time to spill everything without holding back. He gives her the floor, and she starts her story by taking him back to her 3rd year of middle school in Japan. Our boy tries to recall the past, but he doesn't remember ever crossing paths with her before the summoning. Yashiro describes her former self as a gloomy, friendless girl who lived in the shadows. One day, she stopped by the convenience store where he worked to buy a bento. Whatever happened after she paid seems to be the foundation of her entire obsession. In the flashback, Yuichi gave her a warm smile and thanked her for the purchase. Back in the present, the girl is blushing furiously as she recounts the moment. She explains that those simple, polite words were delivered with such a beautiful and kind smile that they changed her world forever. Yuichi is still scratching his head, pointing out that he was just doing his job as a clerk. The girl insists that from that day on, her heart was stolen by his kindness, and she fell for him instantly. Our boy realizes she's more than a little off. To him, he was just providing basic customer service, but to her, it was a life-altering event. He considers the possibility that if someone is lonely enough, even a generic phrase from a store clerk can hit like a lightning bolt. He understands how words can touch a heart, but this whole situation is beyond bizarre. Finding out this kind of unnatural obsession has been festering for years is way more disturbing than it is flattering. Yuichi decides to play it cool and gather more info without setting her off. He asks why she's been waiting so long and if she was hiding out at the royal palace this whole time. Breaking into tears, Yashiro admits she believed she'd lost the right to stand by him because she had betrayed him. The girl explains that she made a vow not to approach him until he finally offered his forgiveness. Yuichi is completely lost and asks for specifics on this supposed betrayal. She tells him it all dates back to the very day they were summoned into this world. A flashback shows the brutal moment the king banished Yuichi in front of the entire class. Yashiro was there in the crowd, watching in total shock. She confesses that because she's terrible with words, she stayed silent while it happened. In her mind, failing to defend him during his exile makes her a traitor of the highest order. He can understand why she'd feel some guilt, given that the banishment was basically a public execution. However, he tells her that her logic for avoiding him doesn't really hold water. He's still trying to process her level of devotion, but the girl simply claims she has always been by his side, and she means that literally. Yashiro continues her confession, explaining that her sin kept her from being close to him. When Yuichi asks what she means by always being there, she drops into a deep, formal bow and begs for his forgiveness. She admits she wanted to be with him every second, but school schedules meant she could only watch him during lunch breaks and from after school until midnight. She sounds genuinely devastated that she could only manage to stalk him for half of every day. Our boy breaks into a cold sweat as the terrifying reality sinks in. This girl isn't just a fan. She's a textbook stalker. He asks if she's actually being serious, and she pumps her fists with terrifying enthusiasm, declaring she is always sincere. Yuichi realizes that if she's been watching him 24/7, she probably knows things about him even he's forgotten. She just tilts her head, confused why he'd even need to ask. Yashiro is convinced she knows her beloved better than anyone else on the planet. She starts rattling off facts, like how he kept a spare key in an envelope behind his mailbox. She even has a notebook titled All My Loving Memories of My Beloved, where she recorded every mundane detail, including how his air conditioner was installed in an inefficient spot. She even brings up his preference for 2D women over real ones in magazines. Yuichi is visibly shaken by just how deep her surveillance went. The girl beams with joy, vowing they'll never be apart again. When Yuichi asks if she plans to keep lurking in the shadows, she says no. She intends to stand proudly at his side from now on. Our boy tries to make a break for it, claiming he has urgent business elsewhere, but she blurs past him with impossible speed to block his path. He's stunned. She moved so fast he didn't even see her coming. Left breathless by her speed, Yuichi realizes she's more than just a regular creeper. The girl explains that the goddess gave her a cheat skill called hyper-acceleration. She tells him that even if he fled to the ends of the earth, she could catch him in the blink of an eye. Her obsessive behavior just went from annoying to genuinely dangerous. Looking up at the sky, Yuichi realizes he's in a nightmare scenario. A stalker with a teleportation tier speed skill is a recipe for disaster. Since there's no way to outrun her, he decides to face the problem head-on. He looks her straight in the eye and delivers a blunt apology, calling her by her full name before firmly stating that he cannot allow her to stay by his side.